The story starts in a flashback where a dragon looks down at the girl and asks why she's so obsessed with gaining strength. So she looks back with total focus and says it's to meet her master again and to finally walk beside him. The dragon relaxes and asks if this master she's talking about is actually stronger than her, which makes her shout that it's obvious. She tells the dragon she's barely even started learning the basics from him. Now the dragon is confused and asks what kind of creature this master is, figuring he can't possibly be human. But she cuts him off instantly and insists that he is definitely a human. Then she adds a crazy detail. She explains his dad is the god who made the world and his mom is a nature spirit. She pictures his silhouette standing amidst volcanoes and starts to say his name, but right then the scene cuts away to a heavy boot stepping onto the ground, and a guy with dark hair is standing there as someone recognizes him as the Master of Sword Saint Alice. The girl looks up at him with total respect and says he must be the great sword saint Takumi. Takumi stares down at her completely confused and just lets out a baffled noise. But that's not it. He awkwardly scratches his cheek and tells her she's definitely got the wrong person. He insists he's not some big-shot great sword saint or anything impressive like that. So he explains he's just a regular old guy who retired to live alone in the mountains ages ago. The girl just laughs it off, saying he's joking and that his sense of humor is top tier. Takumi realizes she isn't listening and just asks who she actually is, which makes her apologize for waiting so long to introduce herself as Sword Saint Alice's top disciple. Hearing that name makes Takumi laugh. He says it really takes him back to the old days, and she finally looks up with a huge smile and introduces herself properly as Leia. Takumi laughs, saying it's crazy that the girl he saved right before retiring is now a sword saint. But then the realization actually hits him. He yells out "Sword Saint" in total shock, and he freaks out, asking if she means that wild brat he had to teach how to use chopsticks 10 years ago. Leia just nods, telling him that's exactly why he's the strongest human and Master Alice's teacher. Takumi calms down a little, mumbling to himself that Alice must have gotten seriously strong then. But he pauses, realizing that if she's only second place, there must be someone ranked above her. He figures the old rankings haven't changed much and asks if Great Sage Nuruhachi is still number 1. Leia shakes her head immediately though, telling him that Nuruhachi actually dropped to 3rd place. She keeps smiling and starts to announce exactly who holds the top spot right now. So she declares Takumi the strongest in the universe by a landslide, and he looks absolutely dead inside. Takumi's soul practically leaves his body, floating off into deep space because the shock is just too much. He drops to his hands and knees on the dirt, yelling that this is totally weird since he retired 10 years ago. He explains that back then he was only ranked around 500th thanks to his team, and he hasn't done a thing since, so he starts stammering, trying to remind her of his tragic backstory where his old party explicitly told him he was fired, basically summarizing him as useless right to his face, and he screams that after getting kicked out, he quit adventuring completely to just live in the mountains alone. Leia just smiles and waves it off, telling him he's being way too humble since she knows all about his great deeds. She starts listing crazy achievements like conquering the Great Dungeon and slaying an ancient dragon to save the capital. She claims his work is considered the greatest in human history across the past, present, and future. But Takumi stares right at her in pure terror, screaming that he has absolutely no memory of doing any of that. Takumi is sweating bullets, screaming that his only memories involve hunting tiny animals and growing veggies in the mountain. Leia isn't listening at all, she just smiles, and says it's amazing how he refuses to brag about his work, calling him a truly wonderful person. Takumi turns away, completely done, and wonders if she's even understanding a single word he's saying. He tries to clarify things, asking her if people seriously believe he did all that crazy stuff by himself. She corrects him, saying the Adventurers Guild records actually show he formed a 2-person party with Lady Alice back then. But she adds that Alice personally told her it was basically Takumi who did everything on his own like a total beast. Takumi starts thinking about it, that Alice girl really became a sword saint and crushed all those legendary quests, and now she's telling people he's the one who did the heavy lifting. He thinks hard about what this means, until he gets a bright idea. She must just be trying to pay him back for taking care of her when she was a little kid. With that mystery solved in his head, he decides he'll just go down the mountain later and tell the guild the real truth. Takumi looks up at the massive building in front of him and thinks to himself that being number 1 in the rankings is way too heavy of a burden, so he turns to the girl and asks what she actually came here to do. Leia gasps a little, startled by the sudden question, and she explains that while Lady Alice is definitely the strongest human alive, she is unfortunately pretty bad at teaching people things. So that is exactly why she rushed all the way here, to beg for teachings from the great sword saint Takumi, the strongest in the universe. Takumi closes his eyes and tries to let her down easy, telling Leia that Alice wasn't exactly his disciple in the way she thinks, and he gives a gentle smile while waving her off, explaining that he honestly has no intention of taking on any disciples at all right now. He turns to walk away, adding that he's actually too weak to teach anyone anyway, so she should just give up on this idea and go home. Suddenly Takumi freezes and starts sweating bullets. He looks down and sees Leia silently pulling out a small blade like it's totally normal. She looks him dead in the eye and calmly says that she came here fully prepared to commit ritual suicide if he refuses to make her his disciple. With intense pressure radiating from her, she asks Takumi to please think about the situation very carefully and give her a serious answer. Takumi realizes he's totally screwed because this girl clearly isn't going to listen to a single word he says, so he gives in immediately and tells her fine, he'll recognize her as his disciple. Leia asks if he's actually serious, and she bursts into tears of joy, yelling out a massive thank you to her new great master. Then she gets way too excited and tackles him with a full-force hug, practically crushing him right there on the spot. The scene cuts to outside the cave, where Leia is panicking and screaming, asking what happened to her master. Takumi wakes up in bed screaming that he's alive. Leia apologizes, assuming he passed out because he's exhausted from fighting an ancient dragon for a month straight. Takumi looks her dead in the eye and bans her from touching him ever again, mostly because he knows he'll actually die next time, but Leia completely misunderstands. She thinks his power is just so massive that touching him would actually be dangerous for her. She's convinced he forced his own body to shut down earlier just to protect her from his overwhelming energy, so she slams her head to the floor in a deep bow and apologizes for making him go through all that trouble. Takumi stares at her and realizes that literally everything she just thought is completely incorrect, but he figures that correcting her right now would be way too much of a pain, so he decides to just let it slide. Plus, he knows for a fact that if she hugs him one more time, his body will actually give out and he'll die, so he comes up with a plan to just handle this loosely. He'll give her a fake full mastery license and send her home. He puts on a confident face and plays along, telling her she understood the situation perfectly. Moving on, the narrator notes that this specific line is going to become the one he uses more than any other in his entire life, and he doesn't know it yet, but he's going to seriously regret not clearing up this misunderstanding right now. Leia looks down and admits that she actually has zero control over her own power, so she attacks with full force every single time because she simply doesn't know how to hold back. She mentions Alice called him the strongest, so she was shocked his aura feels weak like a goblin, figuring he's hiding his true power. Leia bows on the floor and admits she couldn't see his true power at all. She's honestly impressed he can hide it even better than top adventurers, and Takumi stands there listening to her praise. He realizes that even though he knew it, hearing that he looked that weak and pathetic to her really stings. Leia keeps going with her theory, smiling as she says he must have gained that insane control over his aura through some seriously bloody training, so she begs him to please teach her how to do it. Takumi starts sweating nervously with his back turned because he has no idea what she's talking about, but he needs to stall, so he tells her it's late and real training starts tomorrow for now. He just asks her to help out and peel some potatoes. Leia catches the potato and snaps to attention immediately. She looks at the vegetable like it's a critical mission item, and she pulls out her huge sword to peel it. She figures out this is one of those famous tricks where it looks like cooking, but is actually secret training. She shouts out that she expects nothing less from Master Takumi. Takumi just keeps his back turned, probably wondering why she's so intense, but he turns around with a calm smile and tells her she figured it out perfectly, even though inside he knows he's just making up random stuff as he goes. Takumi starts peeling his own potatoes normally, but the narrator mentions that funny enough, this random chore actually becomes a legendary training method later on. Takumi suggests they make rabbit hot pot for dinner and asks if she has any food allergies, but she says she's fine with anything, so Leia looks at the hanging meat and asks why it's only small stuff like rabbits. She wonders why he doesn't hunt big game like bears. Takumi starts sweating and tries to deflect, asking her if they could really eat a whole giant monster if he actually caught one. He thinks to himself that he definitely can't admit the truth, that fighting a bear is way too hard for him, but Leia totally misreads it. She looks amazed and says he must have a deep philosophy about not killing needlessly and respecting life. She adds that Alice told her everything, specifically that Takumi's dad is the god who created the entire universe, and that his mom is the great spirit protecting nature. She is completely convinced his parents are actual deities. Takumi just stands there thinking that's nonsense since his dad is a regular innkeeper and his mom is the landlady. He wonders what Alice is trying to do to him with these crazy lies, but right then something smashes through the roof right between them. Looks like the cooking session is over. Leia totally panics when the roof crashes in and yells out Takumi's name, but she takes one look at him and suddenly gets impressed. She says this is exactly what she expected from him. She notices that even with the enemy right there, Takumi hasn't moved a single inch, and she's amazed that he's standing his ground even though there's all this killing intent coming right at them. She thinks it's only natural for him to be this calm, but the actual reason he's frozen stiff is simply because he's so terrified that he actually peed himself a little right where he stands. Leia draws her sword on the winged girl and demands to know who she is, pointing out she's definitely not human. The intruder smirks and says that's obvious. She asks if she really looks like she belongs to some inferior species. She stares them down and introduces herself as Chloe, the daughter of the Black Dragon King, and she explains she came here specifically to meet the human who supposedly defeated the ancient dragon. Chloe gets right up in his face while he's sweating bullets, asking if he's the one called Takumi, and she introduces herself as Chloe, the daughter of the Black Dragon King, before demanding to know if he's really the guy. Leia steps in immediately and snaps that it's obviously not her. She points out that the man sitting right there is Master Takumi. Chloe takes one look at the trembling mess on the floor and asks if that thing is really him. She looks totally unimpressed. Takumi just sits there facing the wall, hurt by how disappointed she sounds, but he's too scared to even argue back. Leia screams at her for being rude, explaining that Takumi is just suppressing his overwhelming strength on purpose right now. She warns the dragon girl that if he actually got serious for real, she would get wiped out in less than a second. But the truth is Takumi is shaking like a leaf, thinking that he's already using full power just to keep from passing out. Chloe buys the lie completely and gets hyped up, yelling that she wants to see this hidden power right now. So Takumi starts panicking and makes up a lame excuse, begging them to wait a bit because his hot pot dinner is almost ready. Chloe watches him from behind, totally confused. She wonders how he can just focus on skimming scum off a soup pot right in the middle of all this killer bloodlust. So Leia answers for him with a smug look on her face, telling the dragon girl that Master Takumi doesn't even consider her power worth worrying about. Takumi stands there with the ladle, smiling like a pro, but in his head, he's admitting that he's completely given up on life and just wants this over with. He's sweating bullets and thinking that he just wants to enjoy his last supper in peace, but out loud he casually asks her how about it. And he holds out a bowl of stew, suggesting nicely that they should just eat some food and calm down for a second first. He smiles like a total saint handing over the bowl, but that's only because he's already accepted that today is the day he's going to die. Suddenly, a massive scream echoes right out of the cave entrance, yelling about how delicious the food is, and Chloe is sitting there with her cheeks completely stuffed, blushing and shouting that she's never tasted food this good in her entire life. Takumi asks if she wants a refill since there's plenty, acting all generous because he thinks he's a dead man walking, and Chloe immediately shouts that she'll eat. He turns and asks Leia if she wants seconds too, but she politely refuses, saying she'll serve herself so she doesn't trouble his hands with such a task. Takumi serves Leia a bowl, telling her it's a teacher's job to serve the food, and she happily thanks him while he stays calm only because he thinks he's doomed. Leia takes one bite and completely loses her mind, shouting that she can't believe a hot pot this amazing actually exists in this world. She starts ranting with her mouth full, saying he's not just strong but a cooking genius too, calling him a terrifyingly all-powerful Superman. Takumi laughs it off and tells her she's exaggerating and to just shut up and eat, secretly thinking it doesn't matter since he's about to die anyway. Leia immediately apologizes for talking too much and goes right back to focusing on her food. But then Chloe looks over with a serious expression on her face and asks Takumi if she can ask him just one thing. Takumi gives her a totally relaxed smile and tells her he doesn't mind at all, still operating on the logic that a dead man has nothing to worry about. She stares him right in the eyes and asks the big question, since he's obviously so strong, why is he walking around pretending to be weak? She explains that ever since she was born, she believed power was something you show off, but seeing her grandpa lose to him made her doubt everything. And she mentions that her grandpa is the ancient dragon, a legend among dragons who hadn't lost a single fight in thousands of years until now. Chloe explains that ever since Takumi beat him, her grandpa has been shaking in fear of humans and turned into a total shut-in. Takumi immediately realizes Alice is the one behind this mess and wonders what the hell she did to the poor dragon. Chloe continues her rant, saying she just doesn't understand the point of him hiding his strength when he has that much power. She starts listing his flaws, pointing out his frail body, his stupid-looking face, and saying his aura is as small as a goblin. She finishes by telling him he looks weaker than any adventurer she's ever met. But Leia interrupts to scold her for pointing with chopsticks. Takumi tries to smile through tears because getting roasted that hard straight to his face actually hurts his feelings. Leia steps in with a smug look and asks the black lizard if she seriously doesn't understand what's going on here. Chloe snaps back at the nickname, completely offended, while Takumi is still crying in the background, but Leia ignores them and explains that she figured out the truth about him back when she accidentally hugged Takumi that one time. She claims that in that moment, she realized if Takumi ever released all his held-back power, the entire world would be destroyed. Leia is trembling as she stares at him, terrified by the massive power she thinks she's sensing, while Takumi is freaking out internally asking what power she's talking about. She starts explaining her backstory to prove her point, claiming that from a young age, she mastered every single secret technique her clan had to offer. She tells them that through all that intense training, she learned the technique to endure literally any kind of physical pain possible. But then she starts blushing like crazy, admitting that ever since she touched Takumi that one time, her heart won't stop pounding and she heats up just remembering it. She claims that just a tiny touch leaked enough power to almost destroy her body, basically mistaking a massive crush for a death ray. Chloe sarcastically calls it a terrifying power, while Takumi just sits there and tells her that sounds way more like a serious illness. But Leia ignores him and lectures the dragon, claiming Takumi only holds back because they're weak and his crying is actually tears of pity for them. Takumi screams inside his head that she's totally wrong, but he realizes if he doesn't give them a good answer right now, he's probably dead meat. So he switches up his vibe instantly, putting on a smug face and telling Leia she figured it out perfectly, acting like that was the plan all along. He manages to pull off the act, but deep down he's sobbing, wondering what kind of ridiculous guy he has to be just to survive this. Takumi is sweating bullets and crying his eyes out, wondering if his grandpa felt this pathetic when he fought dragons. Chloe stares him down but starts shaking, admitting to herself that she can't find a single way to actually beat him, so she launches herself into the air, yelling out that she definitely hasn't won this fight yet. After that, a crazy rumor starts spreading everywhere that he took down the black dragon without even touching it. But before she leaves, Chloe turns back and points right at him, screaming that she's definitely coming back for a rematch. She disappears into the sky, and Takumi just watches her go, praying that she never actually shows up again. Later inside, Leia pushes him out of the kitchen and insists on handling the cleanup so he can go rest. It's pitch black outside now, so Takumi tells her she needs to head home since the mountain roads are dangerous at night. But they just stare at each other in total confusion. He asks if she's not leaving, and she looks shocked that he'd even ask. She blushes and tells him that Alice taught her a disciple has to live with their master constantly until their training is done. Leia drops a bomb on him, looking totally serious as she declares that she intends to live right here with him, but Takumi immediately panics. He starts yelling no no no, saying he definitely can't do something like that with a girl her age. He tries to put his foot down, telling her to just go home for tonight and come back again tomorrow, and he suddenly remembers her mentioning heart palpitations earlier, so he offers to walk her home and stop by the clinic to get her checked out. Leia turns her head away instantly with a pout, telling him she hates that idea and firmly refuses to go. Then she insists that his power is causing mysterious abnormalities in her body that she's never experienced in her entire life. Takumi stands there looking deadpan, thinking to himself that he definitely has nothing to do with whatever she's feeling. But Leia is blushing hard, saying this tightening pain in her chest makes her feel like power is welling up and she's about to get stronger. Takumi just pictures a literal mushroom cloud, terrified that power welling up means she's going to spontaneously explode. So he tries to reason with her again, wagging his finger and saying he can't let an unmarried girl live with an old guy like him. Takumi stares down nervously and tells her to knock it off. She needs to put that dagger away and stop trying to slice her stomach open right now. Leia holds the blade ready, insisting she's dedicated her whole life to the sword, so silly things like gender differences don't matter to her at all. Takumi realizes this is way too much hassle, so he caves in and tells her fine, she can live here, just as long as she stops trying to commit ritual suicide. Leia's face lights up instantly and she thanks him with a huge smile, but she almost lunges at him before freezing mid-motion, apologizing that she got so happy she almost broke the rule about touching him. Takumi keeps his cool on the outside, simply telling her to be more careful next time, and he watches her bounce away happily, nervously asking her not to break his house while she settles in. Leia stands there blushing hard, whispering that Takumi is truly terrifying because his power flowed into her again without them even touching. She clutches her chest, looking totally overwhelmed as she says her heart is beating so fast it feels like it's going to burst from the energy. Takumi tries to sound like a wise master, lecturing that if she can't even control that little bit of power, she doesn't have a future as a warrior. She starts freaking out again, frantically apologizing for messing up like it's the end of the world, but Takumi is totally over the drama, so he sits down and decides they should just get some rest for tonight. He points across the room, telling her exactly which side is her territory and which side belongs to him. Leia looks pretty bummed out by the distance and asks if she isn't allowed to sleep right next to him. She suddenly gasps and covers her mouth, looking like she just realized something huge, and she claims that if she sleeps next to him, she wouldn't be able to handle his power and she'd actually break. She smiles like she solved a puzzle, asking him if that's the real reason he separated them like that. Takumi keeps a straight face and tells her she figured it out perfectly, confirming that she's totally right. But he lies down thinking the truth is that he would be the one breaking, mostly because he's nervous, and he admits to himself that he can't handle sleeping near a girl since his experience with women is absolutely zero. Leia is lying awake in the dark, whispering that just living together in the same house is already intense, and her face turns completely red as she admits to herself that this situation is way too much for her to handle. Morning comes and Takumi wakes up with a massive yawn, but Leia is already up and greets him right away. Takumi looks over to see her sitting by the entrance with a knife, so he nervously asks what exactly is going on. She points to a huge bucket of peeled potatoes, explaining she was too excited to sleep so she started training at dawn. Takumi completely loses it, realizing that if she keeps peeling food like this, they're gonna starve before winter ends. He immediately sets a new rule to save his supplies, telling her strictly that she is only allowed to peel 1 potato a day. Leia looks crushed and asks how that counts as training, but then she stops mid-complaint like she just had a huge realization. She turns around with a big smile, convinced that figuring out what to do with her free time is the actual training he meant. Takumi is sweating bullets, but he just rolls with it. Dude lies right to her face, saying she understood his plan perfectly. Takumi stares at the bucket of potato peels with total regret, whining about what a waste it is, and he decides he's gonna crush them up later to make potato soup. We see a hand gripping a sword, but Takumi ignores everything to crawl on the floor picking up scraps, complaining that he can't afford to waste food now that expenses are up. Suddenly, Leia screams out, "You bastard, what do you think you're doing?" Her voice is full of rage, and she thrusts her sword forward with insane speed, the blade zooming right past Takumi's face before he can even blink. Takumi freezes up, convinced that she's finally sick of having a broke, stingy master who scrounges for potato scraps, and he starts sweating bullets, thinking about how he gets a premonition of death like 100 times a day living with her. But then a polite voice from the side just casually says, "Good morning, Takumi Dono," and Takumi looks over in confusion. It turns out Leia was aiming at an intruder. She yells at the guy for daring to come back right after Takumi showed him mercy. She decides she's done talking, so she shouts to Takumi that it's time to just finish this guy off for good. Takumi frantically tells Leia to calm down. The sword is literally inches from his nose and scaring him to death, but he manages to say that it looks like this intruder didn't come here to fight. Chloe agrees with him right away, addressing him politely as Takumi Dono, and she explains that she actually came all this way just to make a report to him, so she drops to one knee and drops a massive bombshell on him. She announces that the entire dragon tribe has officially decided to become Takumi's loyal subordinate. Takumi stands there sweating and confused as Chloe continues, declaring that from this moment on, they want him to lead all of them as the new Dragon King. Leia watches this unfold and starts connecting the dots in her head. She realizes her master already raised the strongest disciple in the world, and he just took on an even stronger grand disciple as his student. But that apparently wasn't enough for him, because now he's literally becoming the king of the dragon tribe on top of everything else. Her delusions about his godhood are just going through the roof. Meanwhile, Takumi looks like his soul is leaving his body. He realizes his dreams of living a quiet, boring life are loudly crumbling into pieces right in front of him. And just like that, with a reluctant leader and a misunderstood power, the true legend finally begins. But somewhere else, a mysterious armored figure lurks in the shadows and whispers Takumi's name, signaling that his problems are definitely not over yet. The scene shifts to the past, where a fully armored knight stands over Takumi and drops the hammer. He tells him he's officially kicked out of the party starting today. Takumi's face goes pale and sweaty as the news hits him, and he just manages to mutter a confused question asking why this is happening, because he honestly didn't think it would end like this. His face just goes completely blank with shock. But deep down, he admits to himself that he always knew the truth. He was just a burden to the other members the entire time, and he actually thinks it's a miracle that they let a talentless guy like him stay in the party for this long in the first place. We get a quick look at the squad he's leaving behind. There's Rick the warrior standing tall, and right next to him is Batsu the thief. Then there's Sasha the priestess looking pretty worried about the situation. But the real heavyweight of the group is this mysterious woman standing with her back turned. She's giving off an overwhelming aura that lets everyone know she's the boss. Takumi accepts his fate without a fight and tells them he understands. He says he'll pack up his things and leave tonight. But the girl shouts right in his face with zero chill. She tells him absolutely not and orders him to get out right this second. Takumi tries to be nice one last time. He asks if he can at least make everyone a final meal before he goes. But Sasha completely breaks character. She starts drooling and says that actually sounds really good, So the armored girl shuts that down instantly. She screams in his face to get out right this second. Takumi doesn't fight it. He just thanks them for everything they've done for him up until now, and he walks off into the darkness, looking back one last time to ask them to please take care of Alice. As he leaves, we see a quick memory of a hand gently patting the girl's head, a small moment of kindness. But Rick suddenly calls out to stop him. He tells Takumi to leave the collar behind since it belongs to the old hag. Takumi says he understands. He reaches up to his neck and starts undoing the clasp right away, but crazy light blasts out the second he touches it. Rick realizes the old hag was listening and it's a teleport trap. The magic goes wild around them and Rick panics. He screams that she's actually coming back right now. The party springs into action to fight the incoming threat, and Rick launches a massive kick to send Takumi flying while someone yells that they'll buy time. Rick keeps up the act even now. He screams at Takumi asking what he's doing and demands that he hurry up and get out of there. Sasha joins in too, shouting that he needs to leave right now because he just isn't cut out to be an adventurer anyway. Takumi goes sailing through the air from the force of the kick, but as he flies away, he starts wondering what the hell just happened. He realizes the whole situation was off from the start. Their harsh words sounded completely robotic, like they were just reading bad lines. It finally clicks that they were putting on a show, and he tries to figure out what they were actually trying to do. The realization hits him hard as he looks back at his friends, and the memories of their cruel words start to take on a different meaning. He remembers Rick telling the old hag that he banished Takumi on his own authority, basically begging her to let the guy go free. Then he recalls Sasha pleading with her, explaining that Takumi was at his physical limit and her healing wouldn't be enough to keep him alive. And finally Batsu, who called him the weakest guy in history just to convince the old hag that Takumi wasn't worth keeping in their high-level party. The witch lady steps in and looks furious. She says she won't allow that, declaring that Takumi belongs to Nyoruhachi and will live with them forever. She warns the adventurers not to get in the way since the three of them can't beat Nyoruhachi, and Takumi just watches with tears in his eyes, so he completely loses it, realizing that his friends are actually risking their lives just to protect him from this monster. As he flies backward through the air, he remembers their harsh words about the party being fine without him, but now he knows. Even when they called him dead weight, they were just trying to save him, and he crashes hard into the ground. He skids to a stop and grits his teeth, telling himself that the whole mean act was definitely just a setup to let him escape. The witch lady mocks the party, telling them they only judge power by what's on the surface, so what could they possibly know about the real Takumi? She asks if they ever stopped to think why Alice, who has all that crazy power, was so obsessed with hanging out with Takumi in the first place. Then it cuts to Rick, who whispers for Takumi to run while they buy time, and Sasha quietly adds that his cooking was always delicious, and they both turn around and scream at the top of their lungs, telling him to just get out of there and don't look back. The witch lady realizes he's gone and looks totally confused, asking just where exactly Takumi went. Rick points in the distance and lies that Takumi ran away because Nyoruhachi was bullying him, while Sasha backs him up saying it's all that monster's fault and they need to take the old hag down. She completely panics at that, reaching out and stammering for them to wait. She tries to say something about Alice, but she starts spiraling, telling herself that Nyoruhachi isn't the bad guy and trying desperately to hold back her tears. It doesn't work at all. She just breaks down right there and starts crying like a giant baby. Takumi doesn't waste a second of the distraction. He shouts a thank you to his friends and keeps running for his life. The witch lady snaps and lunges forward with a crazy look on her face, screaming his name, and she vows that it doesn't matter where he tries to hide. She is definitely going to find him no matter what. The story jumps forward to the present time, showing a quiet view of the mountains, where Takumi is back to his usual routine, sitting by a fire and cooking some food while Chloe and Leia wait for him to finish. Chloe starts explaining the dragon hierarchy, mentioning that while every race has a king, her grandfather, the ancient dragon, used to rule over all of them at the top. She explains that her grandpa actually retired after fighting Takumi, so her dad took over. Meanwhile, Takumi is just casually whisking eggs in the background. Chloe keeps going, saying her dad knew Takumi beat the grandpa with overwhelming power, so he made a crazy decision regarding Takumi, and he actually started telling everyone that he wanted to hand over the title of Dragon King directly to him. Leia isn't listening to a word of that history lesson. She's just praising Takumi's god-tier timing with the salt and eggs like it's a miracle. She's basically drooling at this point and tells him she can't hold back anymore because she needs to eat right now, but Takumi shuts her down with a super serious face, telling her it's not ready yet and she has to wait a little longer. He insists she needs to be patient until the egg gets perfectly soft-boiled, treating this soup like it's a life-or-death mission. Chloe ignores the cooking talk and admits she was totally against her dad giving the throne to some human she'd never met, so she decided to come find Takumi herself to see if he was actually worthy, which is hilarious since he's just stressing over eggs right now. Chloe gets annoyed and asks if anyone is even listening to her story. She's standing there while Takumi cooks and Leia laughs and admits she isn't listening at all, calling her Black Lizard and saying now isn't the time, so Chloe yells that she came to report to him, and even though Takumi says he heard her, she screams that he's not listening. Takumi cuts the drama short. He says the food is finally done and tells them to stop talking so they can eat breakfast. Leia doesn't wait for permission and takes a bite right away, making a happy noise as she eats. Her eyes sparkle and she blushes, stammering out to Takumi that the soup tastes absolutely delicious, and she's totally lost in the flavor, saying the egg is melting in her mouth, it's just soup, but she's losing it. Chloe ignores the food and gets serious again, explaining that for dragons, following the strong is the rule, and she mentions that even though he had the power to crush her grandpa back then, he didn't show it off one bit. She finishes by saying that seeing Takumi live so humbly is exactly what showed her the future of the dragon clan. Chloe suddenly gets down on her knees and begs him to take over, asking him to become the king of the dragon tribe and lead them. Takumi looks completely dead inside, thinking that sounds less like an honor and more like a straight-up nightmare scenario. He's sweating bullets and panicking internally, repeating that it's impossible and he hates it, trying to figure out how to say no without dying. But Leia steps in with this smug look on her face, telling the Black Lizard to chill out for a second. She's got this handled. She smiles and explains that Takumi never technically said he wouldn't become the king, he's just being quiet about it, and Chloe's face lights up asking if that's really true, while Takumi is freaking out in the background screaming, "No, no, no," over and over. Leia ignores him and tells Chloe not to rush things, claiming he just means the time isn't right yet, leaving Takumi totally confused. Chloe gets super intense about it, asking what she means by that time and when exactly it's supposed to happen, so Leia replies right away that the answer is completely obvious, sounding like she's planned this whole thing out. She declares it'll happen when they conquer every species in the world and prepare the ultimate throne for him, while Takumi just stands there laughing nervously. Leia keeps talking for him, claiming Takumi won't be satisfied with something as small as being king of the dragon tribe, and she turns to him with a massive, innocent grin and asks him to back her up on that statement. Takumi completely loses it, screaming that she doesn't understand what he's actually thinking at all. Chloe sounds confused by the sudden outburst and asks from outside if that means her assumption was wrong, so Takumi sets the record straight. He says he's not moving from this spot, and he has zero interest in being a perfect king. He smiles and tells Chloe he's sorry, but he's not doing it because he already gets everything he wants right here. And he explains that the mountain already gives him every single thing a person actually needs to survive. He slides a bowl over and tells her to try eating, claiming that life is just about the sun, the earth, and food. Chloe takes one bite and completely melts, making a weird noise because the flavor is totally overwhelming, and she feels warmth wrapping around her body, while Leia smugly asks if the Black Lizard finally gets it now. Chloe finally relents, admitting that a title like King of the Dragon Tribe really is just unnecessary baggage for him, and she clarifies that they've already decided he's their master, so they won't push him to actually lead them, but she begs him to at least keep in the corner of his mind that the Dragon Tribe is under his command now. Takumi sighs and tells her he'll think about it. Now he's stuck with a whole army on top of a disciple, so he starts crying comical tears, wondering why his quiet life turned into such a disaster. But then he snaps out of it and asks how Leia and Chloe even found his house in the first place, because he stops and realizes that he never told a single living soul where he was actually hiding out. Leia cheerfully explains that Alice can see exactly what he's doing just by closing her eyes and thinking about him, and Takumi completely loses it. Having a stalker with magical remote viewing is straight-up terrifying. He tries to ignore that horror for a second and turns to Chloe, asking how on earth she found this place. Chloe tells him she simply went to the Adventurers Guild and asked where the #1 ranker was hanging out, and Takumi immediately starts sweating, asking if the guild actually gave up his location just like that. She says nope, they refuse to tell her anything even if they knew, acting all cheeky about it. Takumi touches his chest and breathes a huge sigh of relief, just glad the system actually worked for once, but Chloe mentions that by total coincidence, there was someone else at the guild looking for him at the exact same time. She explains that this other person happened to be carrying one of his personal items, and she holds up a small bell, saying she got it from them and just followed the scent on it to find him. Takumi sees the bell and his soul basically leaves his body. He knows exactly who that thing belongs to. He starts screaming at Chloe to take that thing and go back home immediately, and he yells at her to throw that bell somewhere far away before it's too late. Chloe is totally confused by his panic and asks why he's acting so weird all of a sudden, but the bell activates right away with a massive burst of magic, forcing Takumi to hit the floor and cover his head. A voice comes out of the light calling Takumi's name, sounding pretty serious, And the person says waiting these last 10 years felt way longer than living for thousands of years. Leia shields her eyes from the glare, completely shocked because she realizes she knows exactly who just showed up. It's the former #1 ranker and elf mage with an immortal body who just stepped out of the light, and the text introduces her as the great sage Nuruhachi, looking pretty intimidating right now. She identifies Leia as Alice's student and Chloe as the dragon's granddaughter, while Takumi cowardly hides behind them. Nuruhachi looks at the girls and asks Takumi if these are the friends he's hanging out with now, so Leia gets serious immediately, staring her down and asking what exactly her goal is for coming here. Nuruhachi smiles and tells him she already said it. She is never leaving Takumi ever again, and Leia turns around looking totally confused, asking her what exactly that's supposed to mean, so the great sage just keeps smirking and says it means exactly what it sounds like, and she spells it out clearly. It means she's going to stay right by Takumi's side at any time and any place. Leia completely loses her mind, stuttering about privacy in the bathroom and screaming about where she plans to sleep. But Nuruhachi just hugs herself while blushing and says obviously they're going to do all of that stuff together. That's the last straw for Leia. She draws her sword immediately and asks Takumi if it's okay to just chop up this great sage right now. Nuruhachi doesn't flinch at all, looking pretty scary as she says the idea of trying to cut her down sounds interesting. Then Chloe jumps in out of nowhere, pointing out a practical problem. Living with 4 people in this tiny cave is gonna be way too cramped. Takumi and Leia both whip their heads around and scream at the dragon girl, asking what she's even talking about. Chloe turns to Leia and asks if she plans to stay here forever, then casually drops the bomb that Takumi is going to be the Dragon King. She makes a little heart sign with her hands and adds that for that to happen, she and Takumi need to get married immediately, so Nuruhachi just laughs the whole thing off, telling them she doesn't care how many wives get involved in this mess. Chloe looks thrilled that someone finally gets it, mentioning she heard about the great sage from her grandpa and is ready to team up. Takumi is completely freaking out inside, thinking this sudden harem development is way too much pressure for a virgin like him. Leia decides she's done with the conversation and draws her blade to kill everyone, forcing Takumi to panic and try to stop her. Things suddenly get serious as Takumi calls out Nuruhachi's name, and she turns to give him her full attention. He puts on his serious face and tells her straight up that she needs to leave. He can't have her staying with him, because he explains that while he doesn't have a master, she is the one who taught him the basics of adventuring back in the day. Takumi smiles and tells her that despite their history, all he wants to do right now is live a quiet, peaceful life in these mountains. Takumi feels pretty confident, thinking that since he and Nuruhachi have known each other for so long, she definitely understands where he's coming from. Nuruhachi just lets out a small, amused sound, and she starts cracking her knuckles with a creepy smile on her face, asking Takumi if he's really planning to go against her right now. Takumi completely freezes up, realizing she didn't get his point at all. She thinks he's trying to start a fight. Leia jumps in to praise him for his strong words, adding that if he had agreed to let the witch stay, she was fully prepared to kill everyone and then herself. So Takumi looks exhausted and begs her to stop talking. He just wants her to quit making this situation more complicated than it already is. Suddenly, Nuruhachi unleashes a massive dark aura, asking Takumi if he's sure about this since he knows exactly what happens to people who defy her. The guy is shaking uncontrollably in terror, thinking to himself that this is bad and he's seriously about to pee his pants. But Leia suddenly reaches out to stop him, telling him to wait just a second because she steps in front of him, saying she understands he's shaking from the excitement of battle, but she wants him to let her handle this one. Takumi realizes that Leia is misunderstanding the situation in a positive way for her, but it's stressing him out because she steps right up to the witch and declares that she, the disciple of Takumi, will be her opponent. Nuruhachi finds it pretty interesting that Leia is a student of both Alice and Takumi, so she agrees to take her on. And while that's happening, Takumi looks over and sees Chloe doing squats nearby, so he asks what the heck she's doing. Chloe says she's just getting ready to fight whoever wins this match, which completely confuses Takumi, so she asks if this isn't some kind of battle royale where the survivors fight, but Takumi immediately screams that she's wrong. He turns back to the main fight and yells that killing each other is forbidden, begging them to keep it as a safe practice match. But Leia completely ignores him and locks in, announcing that she's coming in for the attack. Chloe watches from the side and suddenly freaks out, realizing that the girl is actually using a technique called god possession. Nuruhachi smiles like a maniac, saying she heard Leia fights by letting a god take over her body, and now she can finally go all out. Leia charges in looking crazy, ready to slice the witch in half, but Takumi cuts in and tells Nuruhachi that's enough, stopping the fight right there. Nuruhachi looks over and asks if he's interrupting to give her a kiss for winning or something. He ignores the joke and says they can't be together forever, but she can come visit anytime. He promises to wear the bell like old times, so he begs her to just go home for today. She smiles and says it can't be helped, she'll let this one slide as a favor. But before she leaves, she tells him she has one specific warning for him, and she points out that Leia's power looks like Alice's but won't last. Takumi says he knows. She starts to comment on his personality but decides to just drop it and leave it at that. She orders Chloe to carry her home, even though the dragon girl says she wants to stay with Takumi. The dragon girl gets dragged off into the sky, yelling at the witch not to touch her horns since they're super sensitive, and once they're gone, Takumi turns around to check if Leia is okay. She just groans in response, but suddenly she grabs him in a crushing hug. You can actually hear his bones snapping while he screams for his life. She starts crying her eyes out and apologizing to him, completely ignoring the fact that she's wrecking his body. So he manages to squeeze out that it's fine, trying to act tough even though he's definitely in pain. And he holds up his broken, floppy arm and tells her not to worry, that witch is a great sage, so beating her is impossible anyway. Leia doesn't take the comfort well though, shaking with frustration and admitting that she was just too immature back there. She explains that during the fight she let Neurohatch's trash talk get inside her head and mess her up, but Takumi listens as she reveals that the witch brought up a past she hasn't even told her master Alice about yet. Takumi's face goes completely blank right there. He realizes this is setting up a flashback that's gonna take forever. Takumi looks super serious, but he's actually just panicking about his rice harvest. He needs to wrap this conversation up fast, and Leia looks up at him with teary eyes, getting ready to launch into her emotional story. But suddenly Takumi interrupts her with a confident pose, telling her she doesn't need to say a word because he already understands everything. Leia gasps in disbelief. She's convinced he saw through her entire tragic past just by looking into her eyes, so Takumi plays along perfectly, shouldering his farming hoe and confirming that's exactly what happened. He turns to leave, secretly celebrating the time save. He definitely didn't want to get stuck listening to a heavy trauma dump. As they hike toward the mountains, Leia asks him seriously what she needs to do to finally break away from that past, so Takumi just tosses out some lazy advice, asking her why she doesn't just try not worrying about it. He adds that being out in nature makes things like the past feel small and insignificant, trying to sound deep, but Leia misunderstands completely. She's amazed he can call her trauma tiny, even after knowing the truth. Takumi nervously makes up some nonsense about the wind blowing the past away. He's totally winging it, and Leia stares at him like he's a genius. But seeing her look at him that way actually makes Takumi remember the past. He starts thinking back to when he first found Alice as a kid and tried his best to raise her properly. But he knew that since he was the weakest guy around, staying by her side meant he was just dragging everyone else down. He admits to himself that the real reason he quit being an adventurer back then wasn't to run away from Neurohachi. It was simply because he was too weak to stand next to Alice anymore without feeling like a burden. So he recalls the harsh words Neurohachi said to him, claiming that the resemblance to Alice wouldn't last long. He considers training his body one more time to get back in shape, thinking maybe he could fix this. But after 10 years of retirement, his weak body has only gotten worse. A goblin would probably destroy him now. He decides he'll just play along with this master act until Leia is satisfied and finally decides to leave. Takumi realizes he doesn't even need to teach her anything. Leia is just going to get stronger on her own. So he decides that at least for now, he might as well commit to the bit and act like a decent master for her. Leia smiles huge and tells him she'll definitely win next time, all because she got to hug him so much. She clenches her fists and says she feels way more power inside her now than when she used her god mode. Takumi gets nervous seeing her so hyped up, so he tells her to chill out and just take things slowly for now. He mentions that Neurohachi will probably keep showing up, so he advises her to fight with less power next time. Leia shouts back a massive yes to his orders, her voice echoing out over the quiet fields nearby. But once the moment passes, Takumi looks annoyed as he starts thinking about Neurohachi again, and he figures she'll visit daily, but he's begging inside for her to give him a break and make it once a week. Meanwhile, the witch lady looks up with a smirk on her face and asks if Alice has finally shown up. Neurohachi gets this super dark look on her face and declares she's going to get rid of anyone who tries to get close to Takumi. She stares right at the other girl and points out that she's making a pretty intense face right now, but Neurohachi smiles and admits that honestly, she's making the exact same face herself. The girl covers her mouth like she got caught off guard and admits that yeah, Neurohachi might actually be right about that. It flashes back to when they were just kids, showing the moment Takumi bought a sword for a young Neurohachi, and we learn that Alice ended up holding onto the weapon that Takumi left behind all those years ago. But here's the weird part. Even though everyone calls her the Sword Saint, Alice isn't actually a swordsman at all, and she just punches people seriously, that's it, but her punch is stronger than any other attack in the entire world. Since magic doesn't work on Alice, Neurohachi realizes she has to keep all her magic inside her body to boost her physical stats. So she gets into a fighting stance and says she's coming for her. Looks like it's finally time to throw down. Nuruhachi doesn't hold anything back and charges in, while Alice launches a massive attack right at her. Nuruhachi yells that she's going to fight head-on, no cheap tricks, just a straight-up brawl, so she decides not to dodge at all and pours every ounce of power she has into this one moment, and Alice's fist connects hard with Nuruhachi's face. It's a brutal hit that rattles the whole room. The impact sends Nuruhachi flying backward, smashing her body deep into the stone wall of the chamber. She slides down in shock, realizing that hit was insane. Her entire stock of magic just got blown away instantly. Beaten up and sweating, she looks over at Alice and asks if she's going to finish the job right now. But Alice tells her no, she just needed to make sure Nuruhachi couldn't go see Takumi for a while. She clenches her fist and says that's good enough for her. She made her point loud and clear, and Nuruhachi admits she's right. Since her magic is completely drained now, she can't even teleport out of there. Nuruhachi looks at the castle and decides she's done. She plans to just pretend she's dead for a while until she heals up. But she has one burning question, so she looks up and asks Alice why she sent Leia over to Takumi in the first place. And since Alice isn't really explaining it, Nuruhachi figures she has no choice but to use her magic to read Alice's mind right there. As soon as she taps in, she completely freaks out. She can't believe the sheer intensity of the emotions she's feeling from Alice. She's terrified that a human can even hold that much emotion while keeping such a calm face, but then she sees the truth. Nuruhachi realizes that Alice has been living her entire life solely for Takumi's sake. But that's not even the craziest part, because she also sees that Alice genuinely believes Takumi is way stronger than she is, like it's a total fact in her mind. Nuruhachi tears up a little and admits that she's actually starting to understand where Alice is coming from now. So as Alice walks away, Nuruhachi reflects on how everyone is born with a different capacity, like a container for their soul. And some people have massive containers that can hold anything, from huge fortunes to entire kingdoms or even the whole world itself. Nuruhachi stares at the overflowing cup, realizing that even people with huge souls can't actually handle intense types like her or Alice. And she admits to herself that the only person built to deal with their mess is Takumi. He's the only one who can take it. She remembers a time when Takumi smiled at her like an idiot, asking if doing this training would finally make him strong. So she had to scream at him to stop immediately, warning him that he was literally going to die if he kept trying. Back in the present, Nuruhachi snaps out of it. She tells Alice not to look down on her because she's not just anyone, and she declares her true name is Chilt, the great sage and head of her clan, flexing all her titles as she powers up. She screams that Takumi belongs to her people and she's not handing him over to anyone. But that's as far as she gets because mid-sentence, she gets absolutely folded by a massive punch to the gut that shuts her up instantly. Meanwhile, Leia completely misreads a situation and thinks they need milk, so she eagerly volunteers to go run and buy some. But Takumi looks nervous and shuts that down fast. He tells her he'll go himself and she needs to stay behind to guard the house. Leia refuses to let him go, insisting she can't burden him with menial labor, so she prepares to summon a speed god to sprint there instantly. Takumi freaks out and waves his hands frantically, yelling at her to just go normally without using any crazy powers. He grabs a pen to write a quick list, telling her to get 2 liters of milk and use whatever change is left to buy a cheap sword and shield. Leia salutes and screams that she'll put her life on the line for this first errand, but Takumi tells her to chill. Dying isn't part of the request. He watches the path, figuring since it's a straight shot to town she'll be back by noon, so he decides to trust her on this one. Later, Leia walks in saying she's home carrying a massive live cow on her back while holding Alice's hand, and Takumi just stares, asking how it ended up like this. He looks at her smiling face, trying to process why he sent her to the store for milk, and she decided to bring back the entire animal instead. Then he looks closer at her gear and notices a sword that looks way too expensive for the budget he gave her, and he starts panicking because the weapon is giving off a ridiculously evil aura that screams trouble. But that's not even the end of it. He spots something else that makes him freeze up completely. Takumi stares at the massive object on her back and starts sweating bullets, asking if that thing is supposed to be a shield. Leia smiles like everything is normal and confirms that nope, it definitely isn't a shield at all. So Takumi drops to the ground in total defeat, wondering how a simple milk run turned into this mess. And he looks at the little elf girl standing there and asks for her name, so she taps her chin and says it's Chiharu. He repeats the name to double-check, and she clasps her hands together, happily confirming that yep, she's Chiharu. Leia explains that the kid was found in town with memory loss, so nobody has a clue who her parents are or where she came from. But the kid called out Leia's name when she walked by, so Leia figured they must be connected somehow and decided to take her in. Takumi looks at the girl and starts freaking out, asking Leia if she seriously doesn't recognize who this kid actually is. Leia says it should be their first meeting, but she admits that for some reason she feels like she's seen the girl somewhere before. Then the kid points a finger right at his face and shouts his name, proving she definitely knows exactly who he is. Takumi turns back to the mysterious kid, sweating a little as he asks if she seriously knows who he is, and Chiharu throws her hands up in the air, happily chirping that she absolutely knows him, and she knows Leia too, so Leia gasps loudly, eyes going wide as a crazy idea hits her. She turns to Takumi and starts asking if maybe this child is actually their daughter who traveled back from the future. Leia is blushing hard while Chiharu just stands there looking smug about it. Then Leia spirals into a massive delusion, rambling about how the timeline fits and how the kid must be here to change a despair-filled future where they're a married couple. So Takumi immediately covers Chiharu's eyes, telling her that good kids shouldn't look at the crazy lady right now. He decides to ignore Leia's breakdown completely and says he's just going to milk the cow and make some potato soup. But he pauses while sitting next to the animal and asks Leia why she brought the entire living cow home instead of just buying a carton of milk. Leia explains that she did go to buy milk, but the ranch was being attacked by goblins, she wiped them out, so the farmers gave her the whole cow as a thank you. Takumi nods and tells her good job, imagining she fought a couple of weaklings with a stick, totally underestimating what she actually did. Leia laughs loudly while a flashback shows the reality. She didn't just fight a few guys, she completely wiped out a massive army of goblins, and she proudly declares that since she defeated hundreds of enemies as his disciple, the credit basically belongs to him. So Takumi laughs it off, still totally convinced she only fought 2 or 3 weaklings and is just exaggerating the whole thing. He decides to move past the hero talk and serves up dinner, a fancy bowl of chilled, coarsely ground potato soup, and he smiles at the little elf girl, telling her she doesn't need to rush because he cooked a huge batch for seconds. Chiharu is absolutely loving it. She shoves the food into her mouth and cheers about how the potatoes are doing all the heavy lifting here. Leia is just as impressed. She's practically crying over the texture and praises how the creamy soup still feels like eating real potatoes. And she looks at the 3 of them sitting together around the hearth and happily remarks that they really look like a family right now. But then she snaps back into delusional mode, whispering that this domestic vibe proves Chiharu is their child from the future. So Takumi points out that 2 humans can't make an elf baby, but Chiharu just sparkles and says she's totally fine calling them mom and dad. Leia smugly points out that Chiharu has totally accepted the family dynamic, but Takumi yells that he doesn't accept any of this. He's freaking out that he's still a virgin but is somehow getting forced into having a wife and kid, so he desperately changes the subject to the sword Leia bought earlier, noting that it looks expensive and asking if she actually had enough cash for it. Leia explains that the price was actually really low. Apparently, nobody has been able to master this specific sword for ages, and it just drifted into this rural town, so Takumi asks what she means by master it. And she casually reveals the weapon's name is the demon sword Soul Eater. Takumi starts sweating bullets as she elaborates that the sword drains the wielder's power and is said to literally devour their soul. Takumi stares blankly in horror, realizing his hunch was spot on. He's dealing with a straight-up cursed sword here. Leia admits it's not quite as amazing as the holy sword Takumacaliber he supposedly gave to Alice, but she still thinks it's a decent blade to have. Takumi completely ignores the compliment and whips his head around, screaming about what the hell a Takumacaliber is supposed to be. And turns out, the sword Nuruhachi bought him back in the day got renamed after he left it with Alice. Now it's known by the ridiculous title Excalibur Masamune Takumacaliber. Takumi thinks about how his old cheap gear somehow got hyped up into being one of the world's 3 holy swords, but he needs to focus on right now. He brings up the Soul Eater sword and asks Leia if she actually tried using it herself. So she drops to the floor and admits she tested it at the shop, but it drained her power instantly and she almost died on the spot. Takumi immediately tells her that's way too dangerous and orders her to go return it right now, but Leia brushes it off with a smile, insisting that since it's Takumi wielding it, he'll definitely be fine with the curse. Later that evening, Chiharu calls out to him, so Takumi casually asks if she's already getting sleepy, and she tells him that a whole bunch of things have arrived. Turns out the entire house is surrounded by monsters. A massive horde of angry goblins is closing in on their location, staring them down with serious intensity. Leia yells his name in a panic while Takumi realizes with horror that they must have been followed all the way home, so he tells Leia this is her mess to fix and orders her to handle it, while she just apologizes for the trouble. Leia drops a bombshell. She claims the magic sword drained all her energy at the shop so she can't fight, and Takumi realizes he's completely doomed. Outside the shack, the situation gets worse as the rumbling sound of the goblin army gets louder and closer, so Takumi forces himself to act cool. He tells Leia to watch closely, and she happily hands him the cursed weapon. He takes a stance and gives her a final order, telling her that if he dies, she needs to grab Chiharu and make a run for it. But the moment he grips the handle, his face twists up in shock, Something is definitely wrong, and he starts panicking, yelling that his power is actually being drained out of his body by the weapon. Things get even crazier when he suddenly hears a strange voice ringing directly inside his head. So he figures out that the sword actually has a mind of its own and is trying to suck him dry. But Takumi decides to go all in. He screams at the sword to take his soul if that's what it takes to save his friends. The sword just replies that he doesn't have a single millimeter of power to offer, leaving Takumi completely confused. Takumi just freezes up while the sword tells him this is actually impossible, like, seriously impossible. It says it's been a magic sword for a long time, but this is the first time it's met a human with zero power. Leia watches from behind and praises him, amazed that he can hold the Soul Eater and stand there so calmly. She figures his power must be infinite, so not even a legendary magic sword can manage to drain it all dry. Takumi tells her she's exactly right, even though he's internally screaming that she is completely wrong. The sword ignores them and gets mad, explaining that everyone born in this world has a vessel for power. It claims power fills up from the moment of birth, so it asks why the hell Takumi doesn't have one at all. Takumi awkwardly apologizes to the heir and says he honestly doesn't know, which makes things weird because Leia asks him what he's talking about, since she definitely can't hear the voice he's responding to. He realizes only he can hear the sword, meaning he just turned into a weird old guy talking to himself. The goblins are just staring at him, chattering nervously amongst themselves because they have no idea what's going on, and Takumi notices they're keeping their distance. He realizes they're actually terrified of the dark aura coming off the magic sword, so he tries to take advantage of the mood. He puts on a desperate smile and politely asks Mr. Magic Sword if it would mind defeating the goblins for him. The sword shuts him down instantly, asking why the hell it should help a guy with zero power, and Takumi just awkwardly admits it has a point. But then the sword changes its tune, mentioning that the little girl standing over there actually has a ridiculous amount of power. It tells Takumi that if he lets it drain her energy regularly, it might consider helping him out. Takumi nervously asks if it promises to hold back a little, and the sword agrees, assuring him that it wouldn't want to wreck such a valuable piece of property since that would be a total waste. That's good enough for Takumi, so the contract is officially established right there on the spot. The sword says it's time to clean this mess up quickly, and suddenly a bunch of dark energy orbs start popping up around them, and Takumi swings the blade, unleashing a massive attack called the Evil Dragon Dark Great Flame Bullet to wipe everything out. Takumi yells the attack name, but the sword immediately roasts him, asking why he had to scream it like that. It's super cringe and embarrassing, so the goblins barely have time to panic before the attack hits, and a massive pillar of dark energy erupts, completely blowing up the forest and taking the goblins with it. When the dust clears, Leia is totally hyped and says he's amazing, but Takumi is actually just exhausted and trying not to collapse, so Leia comes up with her own explanation. She says it looked like he was just standing there blankly, but that must be the legendary state of nothingness required for the move. Takumi is sweating bullets because she's totally wrong, but he just plays it cool and tells her she understood perfectly. Then the sword whispers that the job is done and tells Takumi to keep his promise. Takumi quietly agrees just as Leia runs over, and he immediately starts gaslighting her to fulfill the deal. He scolds her, saying that letting a sword like this drain her energy just shows how inexperienced she still is. Leia buys it instantly and apologizes, saying she can really feel the massive difference in power between them now, and she yells that compared to Takumi's strength, her own power is basically nothing but trash. Takumi is crying internal tears, admitting to himself that he's actually just total trash, but he keeps the act up, telling Leia that on top of potato peeling, she now has to do daily magic sword training where it sucks her power dry. Leia bows deeply and thanks him for the incredible honor of a second training regimen, while Takumi just feels guilty about lying. But the little elf girl points ahead and warns Takumi that there's still a whole lot of enemies left. Just then, a massive horde of monsters crests the hill, staring right at them, and Takumi's face goes pale as he realizes this isn't a joke. There's way too many of them. He tries to call out to his weapon, but the magic sword bluntly announces that business hours are over for the day. Takumi hits his limit and slumps over, thinking that this time he is genuinely finished, when suddenly a massive dragon smashes through the trees with a terrifying roar, basically the worst thing possible. Takumi completely loses it and screams out when he sees the dragon staring him down. The dragon roars down at the battlefield, calling the goblins fools and demanding to know if they realize who they're standing in front of. It announces to the whole army that the man standing there is their Dragon King Lord Takumi himself. Takumi is sweating bullets as he stares up, realizing that this massive beast is actually Chloe in her dragon form, but she shifts back to her human form to make a formal report, explaining that she heard a goblin army was invading the mountain and rushed over immediately. Takumi is completely confused, wondering aloud why this is happening since Leia only beat up a few goblins at a ranch. But Chloe tells him that rumors in the town claim Lord Takumi alone wiped out enough goblins to shake an entire nation. She explains that the Goblin King himself is now leading the army to defeat him, which makes Takumi realize this has escalated into a full-scale war. Chloe adds that the Dragon Clan considers themselves his subordinate, so they're intercepting the enemy, but the goblin numbers are so high they can't stop them all. Takumi tries to maintain his composure in front of her, stammering out that he understands and thanks her for the hard work. But internally he realizes even more enemies would be here without them, so he's grateful, though he quietly insists he's definitely not becoming the Dragon King. Chloe continues her report while dragons burn the forest, explaining that this mess won't end until they defeat the Goblin King leading the army. And she admits that even with the full power of the Dragon Clan on their side, they still haven't managed to locate him yet. Takumi looks confused by that, so Chloe explains that according to rumors, the Goblin King uses magic to shapeshift into whatever he wants. Suddenly, Leia pops into the conversation looking way too happy, announcing that her power charge is complete and she's ready to go, so she suggests that even though it's a hassle, they should just solve the problem by wiping out every single goblin in the area. Takumi and Chloe just stare at her blankly, and Takumi points out that she really just wants an excuse to go wild. Leia panics and yells back that he's got it all wrong, but she doesn't waste a second before activating her God Descent skill, and calling upon the Vermilion King to boost her power. Turns out she really did want to fight. Her face goes completely insane as she screams that she's going to kick every single enemy into the dirt, and she unleashes a massive attack that blows the entire landscape apart, sending rocks and debris flying everywhere. Chloe asks if the Goblin King is hiding somewhere in the army, and a random goblin standing right next to them, who is definitely the king in disguise, nervously says he has no idea. She ignores the grunt and turns to Takumi, asking him if he senses anything suspicious nearby. So Takumi holds up his weapon and points out that the magic sword is literally talking to him, which is definitely suspicious. He starts sweating and tries to explain that it's just a misunderstanding, but Chloe immediately recognizes the voice, identifying it as the evil dragon sealed in the sword, a total disgrace to their entire clan. The sword realizes there's no point hiding it anymore, so it clicks its tongue and admits that its cover is blown. Chloe is impressed because that sword drains the user's life force, so she assumes Takumi is incredibly strong for holding it, even though he's just shaking in terror. But then her attention shifts when she spots the little elf girl standing nearby, and she asks about the kid like she recognizes her. Takumi panics and yells that Chiharu isn't the Goblin King, but Chloe says she knows that. Because she can see it's actually new, Chiharu immediately loses it and screams at Chloe to shut up before she exposes her secret identity. Just to recap the situation, Leia has dragged the braided little kid Chiharu along with her today, and Chiharu is standing right there with the magic sword. But suddenly, things go sideways when a massive blast rips through the ground right in front of them, sending debris flying everywhere. Takumi screams Chloe's name in pure panic, wondering why she just launched an attack at them, but she just looks down at him and sounds impressed, noting that he's actually quite sharp for a human to survive that. Then the enemy leader steps forward, a handsome elf guy who introduces himself as the Goblin King Jasrek. Takumi hears the name Jasrek and immediately gives up on life, mumbling that it's all over for him. He can tell just by looking that this Goblin King is seriously strong, so he turns to his weapon with tears in his eyes and begs the magic sword to save him from this guy. The sword instantly shuts him down, reminding him that it only works once a day and its shift is officially over. Jasrek smiles like he owns the place and asks Takumi if they should get this started already. So Takumi completely freezes up, sweating bullets, and just stammers out a broken "nice to meet you" in English. Then we get a flashback titled The Tale of the Goblin King. Turns out he started life as the absolute weakest monster around. Compared to all the other massive buff goblins in his tribe, this little guy was exceptionally pathetic. This was back in ancient times, so a weakling like him really should have died immediately. But he was such a massive coward that his ability to sense danger was totally off the charts compared to everyone else. He told himself that as long as he survived, he could get strong later, so he focused purely on staying alive. For over 1,000 years, he hid away in the dark, slowly gathering knowledge and power while time passed, and eventually that little goblin changed. He kept evolving until he mastered magic nobody else could beat, finally becoming the strongest Goblin King standing here today. Takumi realizes this whole fairy tale about effort and never giving up isn't just a story, it's real life. And the living legend from that story is standing right there in front of him. Jasrek starts clapping his hands and he smiles, telling Takumi he's actually pretty moved to hear his old story told like that, even if he knows Takumi was just stalling for time. Takumi starts sweating bullets because yeah, his plan to buy time got busted immediately. But the Goblin King just leans in closer, admitting he finds Takumi really interesting and has been curious about him for a while. He wants to know exactly what kind of guy sits at the top of the adventure rankings as the strongest in the universe. So Takumi awkwardly tries to brush it off, stammering that it's really not a big deal at all, but Jasrek isn't buying the humble act. He fires up his magic, claiming his ancient arts can perfectly measure exactly how strong his opponents are. But then he gets confused. He tells Takumi that for the first time ever, his magic draws a total blank and he can't read Takumi's power level at all. Takumi just screams the truth right in his face. The reading is blank because his strength is literally 0. Jasrek doesn't care about the stats. He says he's hyped to fight right now, while Takumi turns away crying that he just wants to go home. But Jasrek's eye suddenly snaps open as he senses something coming, noting that it looks like they won't get to throw hands after all. A massive blast of dark energy explodes right between them out of nowhere, tearing up the ground and separating the two of them. Jasrek looks pretty intense, admitting he didn't even sense the attacker until the very last second, exactly what he expects from a great sage. Chihiro shows up looking absolutely furious, telling the Goblin King to shut his mouth and stop acting so tough. Takumi starts asking about her connection to Nuruhachi, but she cuts him off mid-sentence, saying there's no time to explain and they can talk later. She dives straight into the fight, shouting out "Wave Gun" as she fires a massive blast of energy downward. So Jasrek crosses his arms to block the barrage, realizing that technique definitely belongs to Nuruhachi. Takumi watches from the sidelines, finally starting to wonder if Chihiro and this Nuruhachi person actually have a deep connection, and Chihiro points her finger right at the enemy like a pistol and just says bang. Takumi excitedly asks if that hit landed, but he instantly answers his own question, nope. Jasrek notes that Chihiro is running on fumes and can't hold her form, so Takumi yells her name in panic. He gets real serious, saying there's no point in living if he runs away and leaves a kid behind, so he shouts that he's going to handle this himself no matter what. Just then, a weird little popping sound comes from his sword handle and the sword actually talks. It tells him fine, it'll provide a special service and help him one last time. Takumi fires a huge blast from the weapon that explodes everywhere, but Jasrek blocks it with one hand, admitting that this particular power is actually getting kind of annoying. Chloe gets caught in the blast screaming her head off, when suddenly Leia shows up out of nowhere, announcing that she's taken care of everything for Takumi. The smoke from the explosion clears to reveal Leia standing guard, and Takumi calls out to her from the back. Jasrek just shrugs his shoulders, casually saying that this situation has become a total waste of time, and he tells Takumi that he really attracts some crazy people, first a great sage, now a dragon disciple and a demon's sword. He looks up at the moon through the hole in the cave sailing, seemingly bored with how this turned out. Then he mutters to himself that he's actually feeling a bit of a chill in the air, maybe his instincts kicking in. He smirks at Takumi, admitting that he apparently can't reach the strongest in the universe without beating everyone else first. He adjusts his glove and decides that's too much hassle, so he announces he's going to withdraw for tonight. The guy spins around with a dramatic flair, his huge cape swooshing behind him as he turns to leave, but he isn't done yet. A massive ball of magical energy flies out of nowhere, heading straight for the group. Chloe spots the attack immediately and gets ready to block it, screaming that this guy has some serious nerve. Leia spots something in the distance and immediately points at the cave entrance, yelling that he's over there. Chloe flies in asking if he used a trick to escape, and Leia shouts that they need to chase him down and finish this. The girls take off, but Takumi just stands there. He says he's not chasing them and that he's fine right where he is. The truth is pretty sad though. As he watches the dust settle, he just asks if anyone really thinks he can run that fast. He is standing there all alone when a voice suddenly comes from right behind him, calling him absolutely terrifying. It's Jasrek standing in the shadows. He tells Takumi that he's the first person ever to see through his final trick. Takumi starts sweating buckets because he realizes the others chased a dummy, meaning he's alone with the boss and about to die. But Jasrek completely misreads the fear. He throws his hands up and says Takumi is on a way higher level than he imagined. He keeps his hands in the air and tells Takumi to go ahead and finish him off because this is his total defeat. The moon shines down on the quiet battlefield, and Takumi is just frozen there asking himself why this keeps happening. Just like that, the absolutely insane death match with the Goblin King comes to a sudden and weird end. The magic sword speaks up from his hip, asking Takumi if he is really sure that it was okay not to finish the guy off. Takumi waves his hand dismissively and tells the sword that the enemy probably won't come back anyway, so that's fine. The sword calls him totally naive and says he won't survive like that, then blushes and adds that she might just protect him since he's helpless. Takumi turns back and asks if the magic sword said something just now, but she immediately snaps back that she didn't say a thing. The goblin issue is resolved. But Takumi realizes his problems are piling up like Chiharu's mystery, the Dragon King stuff, and Leia's training. He starts sweating bullets as the realization hits him that the list of unsolved cases on his plate just keeps getting longer and longer. He stares off into the distance wondering what's going to happen to him, while the sword just admires his side profile thinking he looks all dark and broody. The reality is way less cool though. Takumi's legs are shaking so hard that he admits to himself he's about 2 seconds away from wetting his pants. Meanwhile, Jasrek is completely broken. He realizes he's totally helpless against this guy and figures he was stupid to think he could ever escape. Jasrek leans back trembling. He realizes he's facing humanity's strongest warrior and completely loses his nerve. He starts freaking out thinking they watched his every move, so he decides there's only one shameful way out of this. The king drops to his knees screaming for mercy, willing to embarrass himself just to survive, but he looks up and realizes his plan failed. A massive fist is already flying right at his face. Leia throws a full power punch at him while he's bowing, yelling that he caused way too much trouble for Takumi. The hit connects hard and blasts the enemy straight into the sky like a rocket, and Leia drags a beaten goblin back, apologizing to Takumi because she thinks she only caught a fake one. Takumi tells her not to worry about it since he made the guy swear to never come back to this place. She asks if he actually found the real body, while the goblin runs for his life in the background right behind her. Takumi just watches the little guy sprint off and says the dude was crying his eyes out while apologizing. Leia starts praising him for spotting the real enemy while everyone else got fooled. She is totally buying it, and she can't believe he let the Goblin King go on purpose, especially since the guy gets stronger every time he escapes. She claims Takumi is challenging the enemy to come back when he's tougher like it's some cool warrior message. Takumi is sweating bullets but forces a smile, telling her she figured out his plan perfectly. Deep down though, he's totally lost and wondering what hidden message she's even talking about. Anyway, he tells everyone good job and offers Chloe some leftover potato soup he made yesterday, so she politely says she'd love to join them, but as they're heading inside, Chloe suddenly twitches and stops like she sensed something weird. She turns to look at him with a serious face and calls out his name, and she apologizes for asking but wants to know if he'll hand over the magic sword he's keeping. Takumi asks her what happens if he actually hands it over, and she looks him dead in the eye, saying she's gonna snap that thing in half with her bare hands. That sounds pretty intense, so Takumi sweats a bit and asks her to explain the full story behind it, but Chloe starts way back, talking about how there used to be this total genius born into the dragon clan. They said this dragon had so much talent it would eventually be stronger than even the ancient dragon, and everyone had huge expectations, raising it to be the next Dragon King candidate. Takumi is listening, but deep down he's just thinking this story is way too long and his soup is getting cold. Chloe keeps going though, saying that genius let the talent go to its head and started doing stupid stuff, so before long it turned into an evil dragon, lost its real name, and got kicked out of the clan forever. Takumi nervously glances down at the weapon on his hip, repeating the words evil dragon to himself. The sword suddenly interrupts the story, claiming it's not actually evil and this is all just one big misunderstanding. But Chloe completely ignores the voice and continues, explaining how the exiled dragon held a grudge and spent every day picking fights with the clan just to be petty. She says the clan finally ran out of patience with the constant harassment, so they sealed the evil dragon into a demon sword to shut it up. The sword starts sweating nervously, muttering that it has zero memory of doing any of that, and Takumi realizes the weapon on his hip is definitely talking. Chloe points right at the blade and drops a massive bomb. That evil dragon isn't just some random monster, it's actually her older sister, Karna. Takumi completely loses his mind at the reveal, jumping back and screaming out sister in total shock, so Chloe doubles down with a serious look, confirming that the demon's sword is named Karna and she is indeed her shameful older sister. The sword chimes in again with that casual attitude, agreeing that it's true and confirming Chloe is her little sister. Takumi looks at Chloe with concern, asking if she's really planning to snap the sword in half even though they are family, and Chloe doesn't hesitate, explaining that her foolish sister is currently absorbing power while sealed so she can resurrect herself. Chloe gets intense, stating that she absolutely has to stop that resurrection from happening, so Takumi asks if her sister coming back to life would really be that bad of a thing, and she confirms it would be a disaster, claiming her sister will just go right back to doing endless evil. Takumi grips the handle tight and asks the sword directly if that's actually true or not, but Karna denies it instantly, promising she won't do evil anymore and is super sorry to Kuchan. Chloe looks confused by his behavior, asking Takumi if he's actually been chatting with the sword, so he confirms it, suddenly realizing that Chloe can't hear her own sister's voice at all. She explains that likely only the sword's true master can hear it, meaning he's the only one in the world. Then she gets curious, asking him if the sword happens to be saying anything about her right now, and Takumi passes on the message verbatim, saying she's really reflecting on her actions and sorry to Kuchan. Chloe quietly mutters her sister's nickname, seeming a bit shaken by the sudden apology from the sword. She tells Takumi she doesn't fully trust this, but since he's the one holding the sword, she'll let it slide for today. Then she prepares to leave, saying that even if the sword tries to be evil, he's strong enough to punish it easily. Takumi watches her go while sweating bullets, thinking to himself that he definitely can't do anything like that. Later, Chiharu tries to get his attention by poking and squishing his cheeks while calling out his name, so he glances at a letter nearby. He's still curious about the Goblin King and Chiharu's secret, but decides not to rush things. He looks at her and thinks that whatever her true identity is, she's cute right now and that's good enough for him. He finally picks up the envelope on the floor and peels the seal open to see what's inside, and he sees the header right away. It's a formal message addressed to everyone ranked in the top 10 adventurers. The letter states the ancestor Demon King has resurrected, so the guild is holding an emergency meeting for the top 10 immediately. Takumi decides to completely ignore that scary letter from the guild. He puts it away and tells himself he'll pretend he never saw it since it's nap time. He shifts his focus to something way better, announcing that today's lunch is going to be a mushroom and chicken meatball hot pot. He turns to Chiharu, who is awake now, and gives her credit for the meal, double-checking that she was the one who gathered the mushrooms for them. Chiharu beams with a massive smile and confirms it, proudly telling him that yup, she went out and picked them all herself. Suddenly the sword at his waist pipes up, saying the food looks tasty and asking if he'd mind pouring just a little bit of the broth on the blade later. Takumi shuts that down instantly, telling the sword it's absolutely rejected because cleaning a sticky sword afterwards would be a huge pain. 3 days have passed since the Goblin King's attack, and life has finally returned to normal as he ladles out the soup. Takumi says it's been a while since they had days with nothing happening, just enjoying a peaceful afternoon with Chiharu, when a hand suddenly reaches out from behind and grabs him firmly by the shoulder. An old man with a long beard is standing right there, asking the group if they wouldn't mind serving a bowl to him too. Leia immediately jumps back into a combat stance, reaching for her blade and yelling at the intruder to identify himself. But the old man completely ignores her. He just keeps chewing and mumbling about how delicious the food is. He asks what this dish is, instantly figuring out that the meatballs have crushed chicken cartilage in them, and it turns out this foodie is Barbaroi Saza, the chairman of the Adventurers Guild. Chiharu looks totally stressed out seeing him, because this guy is the one person Nuruhachi said in the past she never wanted to fight. Takumi immediately switches to chef mode to answer him, explaining that he mixed crushed lotus root with the cartilage and used potato starch to thicken the broth. He keeps a nervous smile on his face while telling the chairman that the texture should be pretty enjoyable for him. Barbaroi doesn't even look up, just slurping the soup loudly and muttering over and over about how tasty it is. The narrator notes that while Alice or the ancient dragon might have way more raw power, Barbaroi is the absolute last person anyone wants to fight because Takumi recalls hearing about this guy's fighting style. The thing that made even the great sage Nuruhachi fear him is that his entire strategy relies on just straight-up sucker punching people. The strategy is simple but nasty. Use absolutely any method to catch the opponent off guard and make yourself look totally weak and harmless. You have to hide your energy completely, but just for that one split second when you strike, you explode with power to drop them in one hit. Chiharu is still staring at him in total disbelief, muttering about that old man while he just sits there eating. So Barbaroi notices the vibe, laughing and asking if he's hated before offering them a candy like a nice grandpa. Takumi watches him and realizes the rumors are true. Barbaroi looks so frail that even Takumi thinks he could beat him. The chairman suddenly changes the subject, asking if they saw the notice from the 10 Greats recently, but Takumi admits he missed it. Barbaroi says I see quietly, and his eyes suddenly lose all that friendly warmth. Then out of nowhere, he kicks the entire pot of boiling soup right at them, saying it can't be helped. Leia reacts instantly, drawing her blade with a sharp shout to block the scalding attack before it hits them. Leia immediately steps in, yelling that it was just a provocation and telling everyone to calm down while Chiharu jumps in to protect Takumi. Barbaroi just laughs it off like a crazy old man, apologizing and admitting he only attacked them because he wanted to see how they'd react. But his face gets serious as he mutters that he tried to gauge Takumi's power. But since Takumi didn't even flinch, his strength must be absolutely bottomless. Leia wastes no time feeding the fire, mocking the chairman by saying his own capacity is way too small to ever measure someone like Takumi. Takumi is dying inside, thinking that he didn't hold his ground because he's strong. He was literally just too terrified to move a single muscle. The chairman moves on to business, saying it looks pretty bad if the #1 ranked hero isn't present for the 10 Greats meeting. So he decided to just cancel the gathering at the guild headquarters and hold the entire meeting right here instead. Takumi completely freezes up with a blank look on his face, letting out a confused sound as that sinks in. Barbaroi adds that everyone else will be arriving any minute now and casually mentions he doesn't need any tea while they wait. He then gestures to a shadowy figure standing behind him, saying that his subordinate will handle all the boring grunt work for the event. Takumi tells the guy he's quitting the guild anyway, he was planning to retire, so he has absolutely zero regrets about leaving. Leia gets all hyped up, shouting that Takumi is throwing away the #1 seat without hesitation. She thinks his mindset is just amazing. She keeps going, claiming he doesn't need a title because he's the strongest in the universe. To her, that's just an unchangeable fact. Barbaroi says he understands completely. He knows Takumi was originally planning to head to the guild just to get his name removed from the ranking. Takumi replies that being able to tell the chairman directly actually saves him the trip, so it works out perfectly. But Barbaroi ignores the attitude and asks about the letter, mentioning the Ancestor Demon King's revival as the reason for this meeting. The old man explains that they don't know where the Demon King is hiding, but they've actually known for 10 years that he came back to life. He holds up 2 fingers, adding that the enemy is hiding his power somewhere, and that's really all the info they have right now. Takumi looks annoyed and asks what any of that demon stuff has to do with him quitting the guild, but Barbaroi ignores the question completely and just addresses him formally by his title as the first ranked adventurer. Barbaroi drops a massive bomb on him. The guild actually suspects Takumi is the prime candidate to be the next Demon King. Takumi completely loses his mind. He asks if he's really being certified as the villain just because of some huge misunderstanding. Barbaroi ignores the panic and says since the important talk is done, he's leaving the rest to his secretary, and just like that a woman with glasses steps up. She introduces herself as Linden, the one serving as Chairman Barbaroi's secretary. She politely asks Takumi to remember her face from now on, but then she starts flexing her skills because she instantly builds a massive meeting hall right there. Takumi begs them to stop building stuff in front of his house, but the venue is done. Fast forward to the next morning, and high-ranking adventurers start showing up in the mountains one after another. By noon, everyone has arrived, and Linden is just sitting there calmly sipping tea like this is totally normal, while Takumi stands outside looking miserable. He begs them to stop making his house the assembly point for all this craziness, but it's too late. The meeting table is set, and poor Takumi is stuck right there with all the heavy hitters surrounding him. The meeting kicks off with Chairman Barbaroi Saza at rank 0, and right next to him is rank 1 Takumi, who is sweating bullets. Rank 2 is the Goblin King Jasrek, filling in for Alice, while rank 3 is little Chiharu, waving happily as a sub for Nuruhachi. Then there's rank 4, the hero End, who looks totally asleep, and right beside him is rank 5, the half-machine named Machina. Rank 6 is a beast man named Zaha grinning like a maniac, followed by rank 7 Hunter Dagon and the stealthy rank 8 named Yoru. Leia is sitting there too as the 9th rank God Descender, and finally the group is rounded out by rank 10, the Silent Shield Rick. Chairman Barbaroi gets straight to business, officially declaring the start of the 10 Greats meeting, and he announces the main agenda is the resurrection of the Ancestor Demon King, plus how they're gonna handle the prime suspect Takumi. He asks everyone to speak their minds freely without holding anything back, so Takumi immediately starts sweating. He realizes the whole meeting is already based on the idea that he is the Demon King candidate. Suddenly, the Beastman interrupts and asks what the point is. He says this meeting is just for show, so they should just kill the guy and end it. That's the rank 6 berserker Zaha, just casually flicking a coin while suggesting murder, and Takumi is completely losing it, thinking this is way too scary right from the opening bell. But Barbaroi shuts that down calmly. He tells Zaha they can't do that because they need actual hard proof first. Zaha looks annoyed and says that's a total pain. He figures they should just kill him, and if they're wrong, a simple sorry should fix it. But then, a hand goes up in the middle of the argument, and someone asks if they can ask a question. The rank 8 ninja Yoru speaks up from the side. He says he's heard all about the chaos surrounding Takumi lately. Everyone is listening in now, including the rank 7 Super Hunter Dagon, who's watching with a sharp look. Yoru lists the facts. He mentions Leia becoming a disciple, and how Takumi repelled the Black Dragon without even touching it. He adds that Takumi beat the great sage Nuruhachi and the Goblin King's army, then asks if there's any mistake in that summary. Takumi is sweating bullets because it's basically all true. He's starting to suspect he really might be a Demon King himself. Suddenly his sword interrupts, complaining that they forgot to mention he obtained her, and she tells Takun to correct them. Takumi immediately begs the weapon to please just shut up and stay quiet before she makes things worse. Yoru ignores the little outburst and says there is actually one more critical addition to the list, and he reveals that after Nuruhachi was repelled, she was attacked by Takumi's disciple Alice and is now believed to be dead. Takumi is totally shocked to hear she died, but Yoro asks if he's playing dumb since it was obviously his order. The little girl Chiharu, who is acting as the proxy for the great sage, suddenly speaks up asking about Nyoruhachi, and Takumi looks over at her with pure panic written on his face. He is seriously worried about where this is going, but Chiharu just smiles brightly and tells everyone that Nyoruhachi is totally fine and there is nothing to worry about. The rank 4 hero, a guy named End, ignores her smile and asks why a little kid is sitting in the great sage's seat. So Chairman Barbaroi strokes his beard and says it's not just because she's an associate. He sensed Nyoruhachi's aura on her. He gets a weird look on his face and says he has a theory. He assumes she must be Takumi and Nyoruhachi's secret child. Leia loses her mind asking if it's true, but Takumi tells her to chill. He knows it's impossible since he's never been with anyone. The hero End interrupts the drama by raising his hand. He says he has some extra info to add to the conversation, and the rank 5 cyborg girl Machina is watching silently from the side as he prepares to drop another bomb. End reveals that 3 days after the Goblin King was beaten, Takumi was seen holding a secret meeting with Alice. The Goblin King Jasrek, currently disguised as a human proxy, turns to Takumi and asks if he has any excuse for the secret meeting, addressing him straight up as Demon King Takumi, and Takumi immediately freaks out, pointing a finger at him and begging him to say something to clear up the misunderstanding. But Jasrek just smirks like he's enjoying this. So Jasrek pulls out a scroll and announces that he actually brought a letter directly from Alice herself. He starts reading it and it's a disaster. Alice rambles about being his unworthy disciple, then his lover then writes, "Wait, cut that part," but left it in anyway. It's just page after page of obsessive nonsense. Takumi just stares into space with dead, tired eyes, completely overwhelmed by how chaotic and embarrassing this letter is. But Jasrek keeps reading Alice's words where she apologizes for not visiting, claiming she's still too weak and unworthy to even show her face to him yet. Then she drops a bomb. She writes that if the guild is annoying him, she'll just kill them all for him. The mood in the room instantly freezes, and before anyone can react to the threat, a girl with cat ears suddenly appears out of nowhere and greets Takumi with a bright smile, and she introduces herself as the Beast King Miyakis, casually telling him she's there to pick him up, adding a meow at the end like it's totally normal. Zaha the Berserker has heard enough. He grips his massive sword and says it's confirmed now, declaring that he's done talking and ready to kill Takumi right here. Zaha doesn't waste any time and swings his massive weapon down with full force, but Miyakis dodges the attack like it's absolutely nothing, and she licks her hand while staring him down. It turns out she's actually one of the Demon King's 4 heavenly kings, and the rumors about her being scary were definitely true. Barbaroi steps in to check her confidence, telling her that even with her title, she can't possibly take on this many powerful opponents all by herself. But Miyakis just tilts her head and drops a casual ninja, telling the old man that she can actually handle all of them just fine. The hero End steps up next, asking if she can keep that attitude after seeing his Excalibur, while Machina activates her slaughter mode to start the real fight. Machina stares her down cold, calling the Beast King nothing more than prey and promising to dispose of her swiftly and quietly. Suddenly the whole room erupts. A massive blast tears through the building, blowing the roof off and sending debris flying everywhere. Takumi immediately starts screaming for them to stop, waving his hands frantically and begging everyone to pause the violence for just 1 second, but it's too late. The dust settles and Takumi is left sitting in his chair amidst the ruins, completely unable to stand up because his back gave out from fear. He tries to put on a serious face, suggesting they settle this by talking, but inside he is absolutely losing his mind because his house is getting destroyed. Miyakis chills out instantly, saying that if the Demon King tells her to stop, then she's totally fine with that, but Barbaroi isn't buying the act. He asks what's left to discuss since the hard proof is already out there and everyone knows who he is. Takumi is sweating bullets but tries to hold his ground, insisting that he hasn't admitted to being anything yet. So he sits there in the middle of the wreckage and turns his attention to the Beast King, telling her he has a question. He asks her straight up why she thinks he's the Demon King, and he wants to know if she's ever actually seen the guy's face before. Miyakis looks a little confused for a second, goes meow, and simply admits that no, she hasn't. She explains that the Demon King turns into a spirit and enters a human body just to keep his massive power under control. And because of that, she's never actually been able to confirm what his true form looks like in the past. Takumi glares at her, still terrified inside, and asks that if she doesn't know his face, why did she call him the Demon King? She answers politely, revealing that ever since the resurrection happened, she's been tracking the Demon King's specific energy signal. Miyakis explains that while the target is hiding his presence right now, she definitely felt the Demon King's energy in this exact spot just moments ago. Takumi starts sweating bullets as he processes that information. He mutters to himself to wait a second, realizing something huge, so he turns to the sword on his back and asks Karna straight up if there's any chance the Demon King is actually inside him. Karna shuts that down instantly. She tells Takun the probability is absolute zero because he doesn't even have the vessel that normal humans possess. She keeps roasting him, explaining that he's totally empty inside. Without a vessel to hold them, neither power nor spirits can even stay in his body. Takumi has tears streaming down his face because getting called empty hurts, but he admits that while the insult stings, he's actually relieved. This confirms that the scary possibility of him being the Demon King without knowing it is officially gone. His eyes snap open with a serious glare. Now that he knows he's clear, his brain starts working on the real problem and he looks back at the group, pointing out that there are plenty of other people here besides him, so he asks why she decided he was the suspect. Mayuki's narrows her eyes and drops a heavy clue. She reveals that a few days ago, she actually met Alice. Mayuki's explains that it's been 10 years since the Demon King was resurrected, but the guy hasn't shown his face even once. So the four heavenly kings decided to take matters into their own hands. They started looking for a potential vessel among the humans. She drops the first name on their list. She reveals that their number one suspect was actually Alice. Mayuki says that even before the resurrection 10 years ago, Alice was living in the Great Dungeon with power that made zero sense for a human. They were totally convinced she was the one. No matter how they looked at it, they thought the Demon King had chosen her as his host. Mayuki's was so sure that she visited Alice with the rest of the four heavenly kings, but it turned out Alice wasn't the Demon King after all. Since she wasn't the boss, they asked her the obvious question, how did a human get power that goes way beyond human limits? Takumi starts sweating bullets. He thinks to himself that he has a really bad feeling about where this story is going. Mayuki's holds up a finger and says Alice only had one thing to say in response, and she drops the bomb. Alice told them straight up that it was all thanks to Takumi's guidance. Takumi screams at the memory of Alice, insisting that it's a total lie. She was already way past human limits when he found her in that dungeon. And Mayuki's just ignores him though, stating that at this point, they can't think of anyone else but Lord Takumi being the Demon King. One of the others chimes in to agree that the matter is already settled. So Linden pushes up her glasses and confirms it with her own fake data, claiming she's measured the probability at 120%. The top adventurers instantly turn hostile. En draws his blade to defeat the Demon King, while another fighter calls him the perfect final prey. Machina doesn't waste a second either. She activates her Great Massacre mode and announces she's starting combat operations right now. Even Yoru gets ready to strike, quietly murmuring that he's going to annihilate the target, but Leia steps in with zero hesitation. She tells Takumi it's fine, and even if he is the Demon King, she's following him anywhere. Chiharu joins the team too, shouting that she's going to go with them no matter what, and Barbaroi bows his head, saying that under Alice's orders, he's going to serve as Takumi's loyal subordinate from now on. Even the armored warrior Rick steps forward from the back, announcing that he is going to side with Takumi too, so Mayuki's holds up her claws to do the math. She points out that the group has split exactly in half, making this a 6 versus 6 battle. With the team set, a voice asks Takumi why he isn't getting up to fight, but the guy is just hunched over the Soul Eater sword. Takumi is sweating bullets because the truth is that he physically cannot stand up right now. He is absolutely terrified. He lies there vibrating against the floor. His legs have completely given out from the shock, and he's paralyzed with fear. Leia completely misreads the situation though. She proudly claims that this is just like Takumi, implying he doesn't even need to stand for weaklings like these. Chiharu immediately agrees with the delusion, noting that he has so much composure he plans to defeat everyone while sitting down. Takumi realizes he has no choice but to play along with their crazy theory, so he forces his trembling mouth into a stiff grin and he leans back on his rock throne like a boss, telling them they did a good job figuring it out. That was exactly his plan. He sits there looking down on everyone with total confidence. And just like that, the legend of Demon King Takumi officially begins. Chairman Barbaroi decides to de-escalate things, suggesting they stop fighting right here and now, and he brings up a solution. There's a big guild martial arts tournament happening in exactly 1 month. He proposes that both sides send out a team of representatives, and the winner gets one specific wish granted. Takumi tries to keep his cool despite sweating bullets, asking if the chairman really means they can ask for anything. So Barbaroi spreads his arms out and confirms it. He promises the guild won't interfere with Takumi at all, and if that's what Takumi wants, they will never set foot in this place again. Takumi does the math on his team. Jasrek, Leia, and Chiharu are there, but he admits he only has one other ally besides them. Barbaroi tells him not to worry about the numbers though. If Takumi is confident enough, he can even fight solo. But then Mayuki's jumps in with a wild idea. She offers to bring the other 3 heavenly kings to join the squad, and hearing that he'll have backup, Takumi sits back on his rock and coolly accepts the challenge. Barbaroi confirms the deal is set, telling them he'll send over the list of the guild's representatives later, and he glances back at Takumi sitting on his rock, noting that the guy looks totally composed despite everything. Barbaroi admits that if Takumi actually felt like it, he could probably wipe them all out without breaking a sweat, but he stops walking away to add one final condition. He clenches his fists and warns him not to underestimate the guild, addressing him directly as Demon King Takumi. With a creepy, intense stare, Barbaroi reveals that his side still has a secret trump card hidden up their sleeve. Takumi keeps his poker face on and coolly tells the chairman that he's looking forward to seeing it. But the second they leave, Takumi sits there replaying the conversation, realizing he just committed to a huge fight. He instantly decides his master plan is to forfeit in the first round and run away, because he saw Barbaroi's eyes were dead serious about killing him. He's so scared a random waterfall appears to hide the fact that he wet his pants. It is finally the day of the grand tournament, and the city is looking massive under the bright sky. Over at the guild headquarters, everything is set up for the main event to begin, so inside the hall, giant banners unfurl as the announcer declares that the lottery for the main tournament bracket is starting now. He tells everyone in the crowd to get ready for the big reveal, and the full list drops, showing crazy matchups with Chairman Barbaroi, Takumi at rank 1, Alice, and all the monster kings like Miyakis and Chloe. Takumi stares at the board feeling the sudden battle manga vibe. He knows for a fact that if he actually fights, he'll die in 2 seconds, so he makes a very intense face and silently swears that he is absolutely going to forfeit no matter what. Later, Takumi walks through the market area, and some guys whisper about spotting the Demon King's party, but one of them panics and tells his friend not to make eye contact or he'll literally get cursed to death. Takumi ignores the terrifying rumors about him, while Miyaki's just casually pops up behind him saying she wants some cotton candy. Takumi tries to brush Miyaki's off, telling her he's sorry but he'll buy the cotton candy for her on the way home, and he starts stressing out internally. He realizes he has a literal 4 heavenly king following him around, which makes him feel like he's the actual Demon King. He stares blankly ahead, seriously wondering if he'll ever be able to go back to being a normal, everyday guy once this mess is solved. Then he looks out at the massive stadium and thinks to himself that he's never fought on a stage this magnificent before, but a shrine maiden steps in holding some paper charms. She tells him this is the work of the 4 god pillars, something they also have in the east. She explains that the 4 divine beasts, Genbu, Byako, Seryu, and Suzaku, are guarding the 4 directions to turn the arena into a sacred space, and she breaks down the mechanics. Her magic is in the pillars. So Genbu blocks fatal hits, Byako catches cheaters, Seryu heals injuries, and Suzaku brings the dead back to life. She clarifies that if any of those safety measures trigger, it counts as a loss for the fighter, but the main point is that nobody will actually die in this arena. Takumi instantly looks relieved and says that's great news. Now he can fight with total peace of mind knowing he won't get killed, but the Shrine Maiden completely misreads him. She gasps and assumes he was only worried because his overwhelming power might accidentally kill his opponent. Takumi decides to play along with the Shrine Maiden's misunderstanding, telling her she figured it out perfectly, even though he knows she's completely wrong. Suddenly Linden steps in wearing her maid outfit and bows politely, telling Lord Takumi that she's been waiting for him, and she guides everyone to a bench reserved for the Demon King army, leaving Takumi sweating nervously because that label is definitely wrong too. The announcer girl gets hyped on the big screen and yells into her mic that the Great Martial Tournament main event is officially starting. Then they show a clip of a hand pulling a numbered ball from a box, just to prove that the matchmaking lottery was strict and fair. The announcer throws her hand up dramatically and tells the whole stadium to look at the big screen for the finalized tournament bracket. The chart reveals the full lineup, showing that Takumi is set to fight Chairman Barbaroi Saza in the very first match of the day. Takumi's sword speaks up immediately, telling him that this so-called random lottery smells completely rigged. But Takumi just shrugs and says it doesn't matter who his opponent is, mainly because he knows there isn't a single person on that list he can actually beat. The crowd goes wild as the announcer shouts that they aren't wasting any time and will start the first match of the first round right now. The announcer girl calls out for Chairman Barbaroi and Lord Takumi to enter the arena, and Barbaroi chuckles to himself, saying that it's finally time to get this started. Takumi remembers what Nuruhachi told him. This is the guy she hates fighting the most because he uses every dirty trick to catch people off guard. The rumor is that he purposely makes himself look weak and hides his presence to lull opponents into a false sense of security. So Takumi realizes that if his opponent is trying to act weak, that's actually perfect since Takumi is genuinely weak himself. Up in the stands, Leia screams at him not to use his special move yet because she can easily handle the rest of the guys left in the tournament. Ignoring the noise, Takumi faces the chairman and asks if he can clear up one thing before they fight, so he looks him dead in the eye and asks if Barbaroi was the one who suspected him of being the Demon King. But he doesn't get an answer because the announcer immediately screams for the first match to begin, and Barbaroi wastes zero time. He instantly lunges at Takumi with a massive sucker punch before Takumi can even react. Leia screams his name from the stands, and Takumi instantly realizes there is absolutely no way he can dodge this attack. So the strike lands with a massive impact that shatters the arena floor and sends debris flying everywhere. But Barbaroi didn't punch him. He traps Takumi on the ground and unleashes a sealing secret art called the Dark Drain Circle. Karna screams from the sword that this is actually dark magic. She yells that it's impossible to use a technique like that without preparation, but Barbaroi is breathing heavy and sweating bullets. He looks totally drained as he tells Takumi that it is finally over. Dark tentacles start wrapping around Takumi's body as Barbaroi explains that delaying their fight for a month was part of the plan, and forcing Takumi to participate in this grand tournament was also just a setup. He admits that every single thing he did was just to create the conditions to use this one specific technique, so he spent that entire month secretly installing this ritual magic into the arena floor, and he just used up every last drop of his power to finally activate it. Takumi starts sweating and asks if setting up a trap way before the match isn't a total foul, but Barbaroi says it's just a loophole. Since he added it after the arena was built, it's fair game and he glares right at him, saying it doesn't matter how much crazy power Takumi is holding back because that magic circle is designed to drain every single drop of energy until there's absolutely nothing left. Takumi isn't even scared though. He just thinks this feels exactly like Karna's power-draining ability, and he realizes that since this affects the whole area, it's actually a better version of his own sword's power. Barbaroi starts laughing his head off and says it's curtain call. He tells Takumi to dry up and die, but Takumi just casually rips the dark tentacles off his body while Barbaroi watches in total disbelief. The chairman keeps bragging that his technique traps even gods and says sorry for being too strong, but Takumi says it's gross and pointless. The attack only works on strong people, and his power is literally zero. Barbaroi is totally losing it now. He stares at Takumi in pure terror and screams, asking who the hell he actually is, and he points a shaking finger at him, asking if Takumi is some kind of monster that surpasses both gods and demon kings. Karna whispers from the sword while nobody's looking, telling Tak-kun to just say his usual cool line to finish this off. So Takumi folds his arms with a smug look and tells Barbaroi he figured it out perfectly, playing the part like a pro. Just like that, Barbaroi collapses, and the announcer screams that the winner of the first round is the strongest in the universe, Takumi. Takumi waves to the crowd while the announcer yells that he took down Chairman Barbaroi without even breaking a sweat. But the crowd is confused. One guy says even with his special eyes, he couldn't see a thing and the match ended instantly. They start making up crazy theories, wondering if Takumi has an instant kill circle or if he's controlling the air itself. It was actually just a massive self-destruction. But Chiharu doesn't care. She jumps on him, screaming about how cool he was, and Leia hugs him tight, saying it was splendid, while Chloe joins in, bragging that this is exactly what she expects from her fiancé. Mayaki slides in with a smile, asking the Demon King if he's recruiting brides and suggesting she should join the squad too. Leia and Chloe lose it immediately. They both scream at her at the same time, telling her she is definitely not getting taken along. The crowd watches the drama unfold, and some guys get jealous about the harem, shouting that they won't forgive him for this. The announcer cuts in to keep things moving, yelling that the second match of the first round is starting right now, so she calls out the names, telling Linden Lindbergh and Dogma to make their way up to the arena floor. Dogma is this huge armored guy, and he tells everyone to relax because he's practically immortal even without the safety barrier. He brags that it's completely impossible for a mere human to deal any damage to him at all, and he stares down at Linden, warning her that if she plans to forfeit the match, this is the only time she'll get. He adds that he isn't nice enough to go easy on anyone once the fight starts, but Linden doesn't look scared even a little bit. She just adjusts her outfit and bows, wishing him a good day like a proper maid. Linden calmly says goodbye, and right on cue, the space behind her literally shatters open. Mayakis and Takumi look totally stunned, and Mayakis explains that the guy just got erased by spatial teleportation. She calls Dogma an idiot for never playing defense since he usually ignores damage, but she's still shocked he couldn't handle that magic. Takumi starts sweating, wondering if Dogma really lost just because he was weak to magic, or if maybe Linden is actually way stronger than any of them expected. That spatial magic was no joke. The announcer yells that since Dogma is technically missing now, Linden Lindbergh takes the win by default. Mayakis turns to leave, grumbling that Dogma is a disgrace to the four heavenly kings, so she has to go save their reputation herself. The announcer calls for the third match of the first round to start, and Mayakis has this scary, serious look on her face. They call Mayakis and Dagon down to the arena floor, and Dagon steps up looking ready to fight, but then we jump ahead to the fourth match. Azathoth the Dark King has completely wrecked Machina and taken the win. The announcer girl is totally losing it after that last match, yelling about how strong the demon army is and asking if humans even stand a chance against monsters. Takumi is watching from the stands and sweating bullets. He's thinking that even if they're technically allies, that fight was way too brutal, and he's terrified of what happens if they find out he's a fake. He turns to Mayaki sitting next to him and gets serious for a second, asking her if it's really impossible for demons and humans to just live together peacefully. Mayaki shuts that idea down immediately. She tells him it's impossible because the weak will always be afraid of the powerful, and the powerful will always trample on the weak, which just creates a cycle of fighting that's never going to end. She gives him a sharp look and says that her kind simply doesn't follow anyone who's weak, so trying to imagine a future where they live in peace with humans would just be full of contradictions. Right after that heavy conversation, the board lights up for the third match of the first round. It's the Beast King Mayaki's versus the Super Hunter Dagon. The match starts and ends in a split second. The other adventurers in the crowd are completely shocked, stammering that a guy like Dagon just got absolutely wrecked. It's a total one-sided beatdown with Dagon getting crushed instantly, and Mayaki's takes the win. Mayaki's goes on about how their king needs to be the weakest human who understands everyone's pain. But she says there's a catch, that same weak human has to be stronger than all of them too. She tells him straight up that a person like that simply doesn't exist in this world, and Takumi starts sweating, thinking he'd definitely win if it was just a competition for being weak. Mayaki's asks if he forgot that he gave up on that dream of peace a long time ago, but then she tells Demon King Takumi that once this tournament wraps up, the four of them should head to the frontier. Takumi panics and tries to stop her. This is way too much info all at once. He suddenly realizes the original Demon King actually wanted to live in peace with humans back then. The announcer interrupts the moment, yelling that it's time to start the fifth match of round 1. She calls for Leia and Yoru to get into the arena immediately. The next fight is starting. Leia turns back with a confident smile and tells Takumi to watch her closely. So Takumi starts sweating bullets but tries to act cool, telling her to go out there and do her best while he watches from the stands. But the moment she leaves, he notices a mysterious letter tucked away in his pocket, and he opens it to read a creepy message saying, "I haven't forgotten you," and telling him to meet under the big tree behind the arena. Takumi immediately comes up with a classic excuse, telling Chiharu he just needs to hit the bathroom for a bit. But she looks super worried about him, so he puts a hand up and promises her he'll be right back. He heads outside to the meeting spot, where a voice from behind the tree says they knew he was the Demon King all along. The shadow asks him how he wants to be addressed now, if Demon King is the right title or if there's something else. And then the voice continues, saying that if he's cool with it, they can just keep things the way they used to be, and Linden steps out with a sharp look, telling him to just go ahead and call her Linden Lindbergh. Takumi cuts straight to the chase, sweating a bit as he asks Linden what exactly she wants from him. She completely ignores his question and starts talking about flowers, mentioning that blue roses didn't exist in the past. Linden explains that because they were never real, their flower language used to symbolize the word impossible. But she says that changed. When the first blue rose was finally born in this world, a new meaning was born right along with it. She holds her hand out and says that since the flower accomplished the impossible, its meaning shifted into something else, and she poses dramatically while revealing that the blue rose now signifies that dreams come true. Takumi rubs his eye, totally confused by the poetry hour, and asks her again what she actually wants him to do. Linden smiles and gives him a straight answer this time. She tells him she doesn't want him to do anything at all. He asks if she really means he should just keep acting like the Demon King forever, but she corrects him immediately, saying that's right. But it's not just the Demon King he has to play. Linden lists off all his crazy titles like Universe Strongest and tells him she wants him to stay the Demon King forever. Takumi looks totally lost and asks her why she would want a thing like that, but she just stares at him and says it's a secret. She'll only tell him if he can actually beat her in a fight. Takumi narrows his eyes and instantly tells her the answer is no, so he says he's going to forfeit their match in the second round and tell everyone he's the Demon King anyway. Linden says that's unfortunate, but then she steps right into his personal space, and she grabs his face and kisses him right on the lips before he can react. She walks off waving and tells him that was a special kiss to keep his mouth shut. Takumi stands there blushing, freaking out that his first kiss was stolen by the real Demon King. Just then Leia runs up all beat up, cheering that she won and finally overcame her past. Takumi forces a smile while sweating bullets and tells Leia she did a great job out there. Leia gets super emotional and admits the old her would have quit, but knowing Takumi was watching her back gave her the power to push through. So Takumi nervously agrees that's great, while apologizing in his head because he definitely wasn't watching. He was busy getting his first kiss stolen. Just then the tournament moves on and the announcer shouts that they're starting the 6th match of the first round right now. The big screen lights up showing the matchup. It's Rick versus End, and they're called down to the arena. Back in the hallway, Leia notices Takumi looks totally drained and asks if he's okay. She assumes he's just exhausted from cheering for her so hard. Takumi ignores the question and just straight up asks Leia if she's ever kissed anyone before, which makes Leia completely lose her mind, blushing bright red and stammering the word kiss in total shock. She starts flailing around denying she's ever done that, then nervously assumes Takumi obviously has experience. But Takumi just sits there staring at the ground and mutters that nope, he didn't have any experience until literally just now. Takumi's confession hits them hard. Leia and Chloe just freeze up with blank faces while the air gets super heavy, and they snap instantly. Leia demands to know if he kissed someone just now, and Chloe says she wants to hear about this too. They get right in his face with terrifying expressions, telling him he's going to spill every single detail about what happened right now. It's getting so chaotic that the narrator has to ask why the most intense battle is happening outside the arena instead of inside, and the crowd feels the girl's crazy rage but mistakes it for Takumi's power, shaking in fear while praising the Demon King's aura. Suddenly, Chloe starts sniffing the air and announces that she's figured out exactly who the mystery person is. So she shouts that the scent matches the woman the Demon King was with, and just then, Linden pops up right behind them. Linden flips her hair and casually teases them, asking why they're making such a huge fuss over a simple little kiss. Takumi nervously asks why Linden is hanging out at their bench, but she ignores him, and the situation gets way worse because Leia and Chloe decide they want kisses too, and even the sword starts screaming that she's gonna get in on the action. Chiharu suddenly steps up and calls out Takumi's name, and before he can even figure out what's happening, she grabs him and plants a kiss right on his face. She holds his cheeks while he blushes hard, smiling and telling him it's okay because she's never going to let him go ever again. Takumi is so stunned he just lets out a confused groan, but while that's going on, the tournament announcer reveals that the sixth match somehow ended in a double forfeiture before anyone even noticed. Suddenly Chloe jumps into the action, screaming out her evil dragon dark great flame bullet attack. So a massive twin dragon explosion blasts through the arena with enough force to shake the ground. Takumi watches the destruction and admits to himself that while the battle is amazing, there's absolutely no way he can keep up with this level of power. With monsters flying everywhere and chaos all around, he decides that no matter who actually wins this fight, he's definitely forfeiting his turn. Just then Miyakis leans in and casually calls him Demon King, but Takumi immediately tries to shut that title down. Miyakis gets right in his face with a serious look and demands to know who he really is, and she tells him that the aura the girl let out earlier was definitely from the Demon King. Takumi starts freaking out, thinking his cover is totally blown and he's about to get taken out like a mob character. He nervously asks her what she plans to do if he turns out not to be the Demon King, but she just scratches her head and says she won't do anything since the real Demon King seems to need him right now. She decides to pretend she didn't see a thing, leaving Takumi surprised that she's actually being this chill about it. Miyakis mentions the Heavenly Kings might fight humanity again later, but it all depends on the Demon King's orders. Meanwhile, the announcer disqualifies Chloe for cheating, and she just clicks her tongue while standing there exposed. The sword Karna realizes she messed up too, admitting that they caught her sending power to Chloe during the fight. The announcer tries to keep things moving to the 8th match between Alice and Jasrek, but things are getting messy. The announcer shouts that since Jasrek forfeited the match, Alice takes the win by default, and Takumi completely freezes up, realizing the entire first round just flew by way too fast. He starts sweating bullets, wondering if the actual Alice is seriously competing in this tournament, but reality hits him hard because the second round is next. He has to fight Linden and he's terrified. The announcer doesn't give him a break and immediately calls for the second match to begin. So Takumi walks out looking nervous while Linden steps up with a massive, terrifying aura swirling around her. She pushes up her glasses with a creepy smile and says it's finally time to get this started, and she unleashes her dark power, telling him she's done hiding it and asking why the Demon King is doing this. She demands to know why he made her recognize him as the Demon King, even going as far as kissing her. So Takumi realizes he's totally cooked and grabs the bell, desperately begging Nuruhachi to come save him right now. The bell works instantly, space warps right in front of them and Nuruhachi pops out of thin air, so she immediately steps in front of Takumi to shield him, shouting that she's never letting him go again. Chloe and Karna are watching from the side, totally confused because the arena's safety barrier didn't even react to this intruder, and Takumi stares at the bell in his hand, realizing the tournament judges must think summoning a person just counts as equipping a weapon. Linden doesn't seem fazed at all. She just adjusts her glasses with a smirk and says it looks like they won't get any alone time this round. Nuruhachi stands her ground firmly, telling the secretary she's sorry, but she isn't handing Takumi over to anyone and she gets dead serious, asking Linden one last time if she has any intention of backing off and leaving Takumi alone. Linden closes her eyes and surprisingly tells Nurhachi she's grateful to her, admitting that without that flower, she would have broken a long time ago. She says things would have been fine if Alice had been saved back then. She wouldn't have done anything, heck. Even if it was just Nurhachi, it would have been fine, but she glares at Takumi and drops the truth. That man abandoned both of them just to go live a quiet life in the mountains alone. Nurhachi immediately tries to deny it, starting to say something about Takumi, but Linden cuts her off, saying she already knows everything. She knows Nurhachi set this whole situation up and even put a barrier on that mountain just to watch over him. She says Nurhachi threw everything away, Alice, Linden herself, and even her own dreams just for this. Takumi stands there completely shocked, realizing that his exile from the party back then was actually Nurhachi's plan, and she wasn't missing, she was watching him the whole time. Linden asks if sacrificing everything for this guy's happiness is really what makes Nurhachi happy, which makes Nurhachi scream at her to shut up. The talk is over. Nurhachi unleashes a massive attack called the Wave Sphere Purgatory, so Linden counters instantly with her own dark magic, the subspace prison. The two blasts collide with crazy force. It's an all-out clash between Nurhachi and Linden right now. Linden yells through the magic storm that she was always watching. She entrusted her dream to Alice and Nurhachi and just wanted to guard the dungeon, and she screams that she really thought that would have been enough for her. She yells, asking why there was zero progress after watching the two of them for 10 years. She stares at the barrier confused and asks Linden what on earth she's actually doing. Linden says she'll take him if he's not needed. Takumi gets blown away by the blast. Nurhachi denies it instantly and screams that she really needs Takumi, but Linden just smiles and asks what that means. Is she just acting like his guardian, or is she happy just watching from the sidelines until someone else takes him away? Nurhachi snaps right there and screams that she's totally wrong, so she turns bright red and shouts out loud that she actually loves Takumi. Linden fixes her glasses and says she can say it after all, now they can finally start. The whole arena reacts to the sudden energy burst, while Takumi just stands there confused. Linden stands with her back to them and says they're about to replay exactly what happened 10 years ago, and Nurhachi freezes up in fear while Linden tells her that starting right now, she's taking everything she has. Dark magic explodes around Linden, swirling up into the air while everyone watches, and then she looks up with a twisted smile while fixing her glasses, asking if it's finally arrived. A massive dragon slams down from the sky, crashing into the arena and kicking up a huge cloud of dust, so Chloe loses it and screams that it's her grandpa, while Leia yells out that it's the ancient dragon. Takumi looks up shaking. He sees someone riding on the dragon's back and realizes who it is, and Linden watches them land and declares that with this, every single actor is finally on the stage. The rider jumps off the dragon and lands in the wreckage with a dramatic entrance, and Takumi is terrified as the newcomer notes that her disciple became humanity's strongest before she even knew it. The story recaps the main problem. Takumi is a master with absolutely zero talent, yet somehow he's been misunderstood as the strongest guy in the universe, and that's exactly why Alice finally showed up. She stands there smiling like she's accomplished something big, while birds fly peacefully over the mountains in the distance, setting a calm mood for the morning. Takumi sits on his porch with a cup of tea and lets out a huge sigh of relief. He tells himself that his peaceful daily life has finally returned. But then he pauses and admits that actually it hasn't really returned completely. He's just decided to pretend that it has. He looks out at the view and figures that even if this piece is just for show, the situation right now isn't too bad, because Nurhachi is blushing nearby and Leia is smiling, and the narration confirms that Nurhachi has definitely fallen for Takumi. Alice, on the other hand, looks completely drained. The days between Leia's arrival and the end of the tournament were way too cruel for her. Takumi closes his eyes and clasps his hands together, praying hard that he never gets dragged into a mess like that ever again, but someone with mesh markings on their face suddenly interrupts. They say they just came to say hello, but ask if they get points for that too. Linden steps in with a straight face and explains that just saying hello to him requires 5 Takumi points now. So Chloe looks pretty annoyed by the sudden paywall and asks how many points she actually has at the moment. Linden checks the current score and informs her that she is sitting at exactly 4 Takumi points. That answer ticks Chloe off since she's barely made progress. She asks if clearing all those weeds in front of the cave was really only worth 2 points. Linden confirms it, explaining that the rates fluctuate based on the area and she only gets 1 point for every 25 meters she clears. Takumi listens to this and thinks the system feels like a total scam, but he tells himself he needs barriers this high or he'll never get to relax. Chloe decides to check the long-term goal, so she asks Linden how many points she would need to actually marry Takumi. Linden doesn't even hesitate and drops the number. The cost for marriage is set at over 5,600,000,000 points. Chloe yells that she couldn't earn that much even if she weeded the entire planet, but Lyndon adds that making babies after marriage costs another 10 billion. Takumi completely loses his mind at that last part. He can't believe the point system is still a thing even after they get married. Lyndon confirms that's just how the pricing works, no exceptions. Takumi listens and actually feels relieved with prices that high. He realizes he might be able to live in peace for the rest of his life since no one can afford to bother him. While Takumi hides in the bushes wondering if he should thank Alice for inventing this scam, Chloe tries to find a workaround. She asks Lyndon if she can save up points by doing helpful things for Takumi instead, and she gets impatient immediately, asking if there isn't a way to just earn a huge chunk of points all at once. Lyndon explains that for normal tasks, the maximum payout is only 100 points, but she hints that there's another side to the system. She reveals there's a hidden challenge available that pays out 10 billion Takumi points instantly and asks if Chloe wants to try it. Chloe doesn't even think twice. She gets super hyped and yells that obviously she's doing it if that kind of option exists. Lyndon nods and pulls out a communication device, saying she'll contact Lady Alice right away to set it up, so she officially reads out the quest details. Hidden challenge: defeat humanity's strongest. She tells Chloe all she has to do is beat Alice within 60 minutes to get the 10 billion points, and Chloe instantly freezes. The dragon girl realizes she has zero chance against the Sword Saint, so she immediately flies away at top speed, screaming that she'll let them off the hook for today. With the threat gone, Takumi turns to Leia like nothing happened and says it's probably time they went to harvest the rice. Takumi asks about the farm work, but Leia tells him she already finished the harvest early this morning because Mayakis helped her mow everything down. We see the cat girl working hard in the fields. Turns out she did 3 Takumi points worth of labor, but those points are going straight to the Demon King's account. Takumi gets serious for a second, muttering the words Mayakis, Demon King, and Grand Tournament like he's trying to connect the dots. And the scene shifts to the arena entrance where Lyndon is standing tall, blocking the path for Takumi, Leia, and Mayaki. Lyndon admits that winning a one-on-one fight is totally impossible, but she grins and announces that the team battle against Alice starts right now. She strikes a pose and shouts to kick things off, and Alice charges up a massive energy ball. The narrator mentions this is the moment that started the legendary Great Alice War. The attack hits instantly. An explosion wipes out the guild headquarters and turns everything within 2 kilometers into a burnt wasteland. It's a total mess in the stands. All the spectators get their clothes scorched off, and every single person ends up with a giant afro. After the smoke clears, Takumi is hiding inside a hole in the wall, and he quietly calls out to Leia. Takumi chills with a drink and asks what Alice has been doing lately, so Leia tells him she's off training. She says seeing Takumi at the tournament made Alice realize she's still too weak, though Takumi has no clue why she thinks that. Leia explains that Alice made the Takumi point system to keep people away until she's strong enough, but Takumi just cuts in. He looks totally confident right now, but turns out he has zero clue about what's actually coming next. The narrator reveals that in just 1 month, someone shows up who actually managed to grind out 10 billion points. Karna completely loses her mind when she hears that number and screams about the 10 billion points. She immediately snaps at Leia to shut up and calls her a black lizard. She's terrified Takumi might hear them talking. Takumi is sitting right there sweating because he obviously heard every single word of that loud conversation. Karna keeps freaking out, asking who could possibly get that many points when her group only managed to scrape up 25. Leia starts panic sweating too and admits she's way behind. She only has 300 points herself. Leia checks her device and admits that while it usually shouldn't happen, she definitely got a notification from Alice. So Karna immediately demands to know who it is. She's wondering if someone actually managed to clear the hidden challenge. Leia yells that it's impossible because Alice would never lose to anyone other than Takumi, which makes Takumi sweat nervously because he knows for a fact he couldn't beat her either. He's totally fake. But he's mostly just confused about how anyone could possibly grind out 10 billion points in such a short time. Leia mentions that the mystery guest is coming to the cabin today since that's the only place to swap points, and Karna starts freaking out about what the prize is. She screams about marriage and regrets not saving up her own points. But suddenly both girls stop arguing and look out into the distance. They're completely shocked by what they see. Takumi sees it too and realizes this makes sense. If you do it this way, getting 10 billion points is actually doable. It turns out the guest didn't come alone. An entire royal army is marching up the path with a massive carriage. The carriage rolls up with soldiers marching alongside it, and they spot the flag waving in the wind. It definitely belongs to the kingdom of Lucia. Takumi finally understands how they pulled off the 10 billion points. They literally mobilized the entire country to do it. He remembers that Lucia has a population of about 50 million people, so he starts running the numbers in his head. If every single person saved just a little bit each month, the math actually checks out, and he realizes this crazy plan is actually possible. Karna notices who it is and calls out to Leia, who is completely stunned. She screams that it's the Cliff Princess. And right on cue, the carriage comes to a complete stop and the door slowly creaks open to reveal a shadow inside. The group watches nervously from a distance, because even Takumi has heard the rumors about this lady before. Apparently, there's a princess in the kingdom of Lucia who is pushing 30, but she still turns down every single marriage proposal that comes her way. People call her the Princess of the Precipice, a nickname that definitely sticks, but it's not just a random title. Her name actually comes from the white lilies that only grow on the steepest, most dangerous cliffs. In the East, they call those flowers yuri, representing purity and dignity. They say the flower blooms proudly even in the harshest environments, just like the woman stepping out of the carriage right now. The attendant outside announces they've arrived for Lady Celia, and from inside the carriage she thanks Nanison for the hard work. The group watches from the trees while the narration breaks down her history. Apparently, tons of men have proposed to her, but she shot down everyone, even princes and supermodels. She steps out looking totally out of everyone's league, like a beautiful flower blooming way up high on a cliff where no one can touch it. And that's exactly why all the guys she rejected started calling her the Princess of the Precipice. She finally reveals her face. This is the real deal, Celia Shauna Lucia. Takumi completely freezes up because he actually knows her. Celia isn't just royalty. She's an old party member who saved his life a bunch of times back in the day. She looks right at him with a gentle smile and tells him it's been a long time. Her butler Nanison steps in to keep things moving, explaining that Princess Celia is here to exchange her Takumi points and wants to handle the paperwork immediately. Takumi is a little shaken but agrees, saying he'll go ahead and verify the points right now. So the butler says certainly and immediately holds out a tray, asking him to take a look at her T-card first. The butler shows off the card, and it's absolutely ridiculous. It actually has Takumi's serious face printed right on the front, and Nanison introduces it as the Takumi Point card, or T-card for short. He admits he came up with the idea himself, but he says it's standard procedure back home. Every single citizen in the Kingdom of Lucia has one to manage their Takumi points. Takumi is sweating bullets and completely freaking out, asking Nanison when he even had time to make something like that. Nanison ignores the panic and notices Leia in the background. She's staring at the card with a look of pure desperation, so he calmly offers to give them one, explaining that they hand T-cards out to anyone who wants them, not just citizens. Both girls instantly lose their minds. Leia begs for 3 copies so she can preserve one, and Chloe jumps in screaming that she needs 3 too. While they're freaking out, Nanison adjusts his glasses and drops another bomb. Right now, the kingdom is holding the Winter Takumi Festival. He explains that while you can trade points for cash, saving them up during this campaign unlocks special rewards, which means Leia is immediately hooked, grabbing him and demanding to know exactly what kind of special benefits she can get. Nanison lists the rewards: 10 points for goods, 200 for a year of meat, or just 300 for a gold coin. He notes that a single coin is worth a whole house, which makes the point value huge, and he mentions 10 billion points. He asks if she wants to trade now, because that card he just gave her actually comes preloaded with 10 billion points. Leia violently unrolls the scroll he hands her, and Nanison mentions there's also a personal letter from Lady Alice inside. Chloe is losing her mind in the background. She's furious that the card has 10 billion points and Leia got it first. She starts screaming about how she should have taken Leia out sooner, while Nanison just calmly takes notes nearby. Takumi leans in to check on Leia. She's staring at the letter way too intensely, so he asks if she's holding up okay. He spots the name on the paper and starts sweating. They definitely wrote Goblin King on purpose to mock him, and Leia looks up from the scroll with a serious face, confirming that the information inside the letter is absolutely real. Celia smiles at them and asks the big question: what exactly are they going to exchange all those points for? Nanison starts giving a geography lesson, reminding them that there are 5 major countries on the continent, starting with the North and East lands. He points out the Machine City down in the south, and then mentions the Magic Kingdom sitting over in the west, and he finally points to the middle, explaining that the biggest country of them all is the Unified Nation, the central center world where they live. Nanison adjusts his glasses and explains that currently, their Kingdom of Lucia is the one running the show right in the middle of everything. He adds that since they're neighbors with everyone, they've actually managed to keep the peace for over 100 years without any major wars. But then he drops the bad news. Right now, every single country from the north, south, east, and west is trying to invade them at the same time. Takumi completely loses it and screams out, asking if he really means absolutely all the countries are attacking them. Nanison says it all started a month ago because of Takumi's legend. Rumors spread that he instant-killed the chairman and terrified the strongest fighters alive. Takumi starts sweating and tries to defend himself, awkwardly mumbling that he was literally just standing there doing nothing. But Nanasan just continues his report, mentioning that while Takumi is in the guild, the world thinks he's just some powerful hermit hiding in a cave. Nanasan keeps going, saying there's a rumor spreading that Takumi has zero interest in the guild or ruling any country. So Takumi starts sweating because he knows it's true. He literally just wants to cook food and live a quiet life. But Nanasan explains that's exactly the problem. Every nation thinks that if they can just get their hands on Lord Takumi, then they won't just run a country. They'll be able to rule the entire world. So everyone is panicking to get him, and Nanasan reveals that all 4 nations are desperate to collect Takumi points. Some places are even using them as actual money. Leia says she wants some of that cash, while Takumi completely freaks out asking if he's literally become human currency now. Nanasan warns him that at this rate, another country is going to come snatch him up by force, so he explains that Lucia gathered the points first to stop that. Celia steps in and tells Takumi there's no choice left. She grabs his arm tight and starts saying he belongs to the kingdom of Lucia, or rather, something else entirely, and suddenly Takumi remembers a moment from the past looking at her smiling face back when she just talked about doing laundry. Leia is standing there looking totally depressed, muttering about how her heart is cloudier than the weather, but Celia just smiles and calls her over, telling Leia she's going to teach her how to do laundry properly. Leia gets all stiff and nervous, asking if it's really okay for her to be doing something like that, so Celia tells her it's fine, she's a girl, so she really needs to know how to handle laundry anyway. While Leia starts washing, Celia stands next to Takumi and mentions that Leia actually looks a little bit like Alice. Takumi agrees with a smile, admitting that watching her work gives him a weird sense of nostalgia. But Leia is scrubbing way too hard. She asks if the clothes are supposed to be shrinking, and Celia screams that she's literally ripping them apart. Takumi just laughs it off, thinking that it finally feels like his peaceful daily life has come back. But the narrator makes it clear that the massive problem with the Takumi points hasn't been solved even a little bit, and the scene cuts to a flashback title card that reads a few days ago. Celia suddenly gets intense, grabbing Takumi's hands and staring him down while telling him to become hers. Before he can even react, she pulls him into a tight hug right there in the open. Takumi starts panicking and asks if she's serious, but Celia whispers that they just need to pretend to kiss and hold each other for a second. She keeps her voice low and drops the bomb that there's an enemy spy hiding among her subordinates, which totally shocks Takumi. Meanwhile, watching this romantic scene from the sidelines, Chloe completely loses it and screams that she's about to unleash her final dragon form. Leia takes it even worse. She mumbles about giving up on fighting gods and tries to commit seppuku right on the spot, forcing everyone to yell at her to stop. Back at the main scene, Nanasan strikes a dramatic pose and yells out a move called the Sentence Spring Bazooka to catch the snooper. It turns out to be a ninja from the east with a camera, and while Nanasan wants to chase him down, Celia tells him to let it go. Celia explains that since they know who the spy is, they can figure out who hired him, but Nanasan still asks if she's really okay with that. Takumi just watches the whole thing unfold, confused as hell, and asks if that guy was seriously the spy she was talking about. Celia looks at the captured intruder and dismisses him. She says he's just one of many, and probably just a low-ranking spy. So the soldiers standing behind them start freaking out, completely shocked that there's a spy hiding right in their own ranks. Takumi is still panicking about the hug, but Celia tells him to relax, she won't force a marriage. She just needs rumors spreading that he belongs to her kingdom so other countries back off. So in the end, Celia decided not to use her accumulated Takumi points to force a wedding, and instead she blows 100 million points on dungeon day passes to send her entire army home, leaving just herself behind at the scene. She turns to Takumi and says she'll be crashing with him for a while, at least until she tracks down the real mastermind behind this whole mess. Takumi looks confused and asks if she implies someone else is involved, since he was pretty sure the Takumi point system was Alice's idea. But Celia asks if he really believes Alice is smart enough to build a complex anti-fraud system, and Takumi immediately agrees since that girl can't even do basic math. Celia points out how suspicious it is that Alice suddenly joined the tournament after hiding for so long and asks if he sensed a scheme, but Takumi admits he was totally clueless. She gets super serious, warning him that this plan started way before the tournament. Someone is definitely using him and Alice for a massive plot. Takumi looks absolutely miserable with all this pressure. He asks what kind of mess he's getting dragged into this time and says he just wants to end it all right now. Celia is completely ignoring the mood and unpacking her bags. She notes that her bed definitely won't fit in there, and then realizes she forgot to pack her toothbrush. So she just cheerfully says she'll have to get Nanasan to send it over later like it's no big deal. Chloe watches her from the side and asks if that woman is seriously humming a tune right now, and Leia looks totally fed up with the new guest, confirming that she can hear the humming loud and clear. Celia happily wonders where she should sleep tonight, while Leia yells from the back that she drew a hard boundary line and Celia better not cross it. Takumi decides to ask a serious question. He asks if her country is actually okay without the princess around, but she just says it's fine because she left a substitute. Takumi freezes up and asks what she means by a substitute, so we get a reveal of who is covering for her. It's Nulusha Hashudal Chilt, and the text explains that she is actually the first-generation queen of the Lucia kingdom. The scene starts with a memory of the witch lady saying they need to increase their party members, and the story flashes back to 10 years ago to explain how this whole mess started. Takumi explains that Nuruhachi, who was rank 1, forced the guild to pass him, but nobody wanted to team up with a dropout like him. He says the ranks usually stop at E, but he was so bad they created a special F rank underneath just for him. He realized no one would ever want a useless guy like that in their squad, so he was completely stuck right from the start. But Nuruhachi stepped in to save him. She said she'd join his party herself while casually holding up a AAA difficulty quest. After taking out a massive dragon, she muttered that he was way weaker than she thought. She realized she couldn't protect him alone. Back in the present, Takumi asks Nulusha why Nuruhachi came to the Lucia royal castle in the first place, but she ignores the specifics and just keeps walking, telling him to hurry up and asking what's wrong. Takumi stops dead in his tracks. He points at a painting on the wall and says that is definitely a picture of Nuruhachi. Takumi looks at the portrait on the wall, which is labeled as the first-generation queen, Nulusha Hashudal Chilt, and he turns to the current queen to ask if that woman was really the first ruler of this country, so Nulusha corrects him with a smug smile. She says technically, the first queen destroyed the original Lucia kingdom and just took over. The scene shifts to a flashback where someone greets her formally by her full royal name, but Nuruhachi cuts them off immediately. She tells the person bowing on the floor to just call her Nuruhachi because she hates stiff formality. Inside the throne room, the queen at that time agrees to drop the titles and asks what business brings her there today. And Nuruhachi grins and says she came to find party members, specifically people who are excellent at defense, healing, and crisis detection. The queen looks confused and points out that someone as powerful as Nuruhachi shouldn't need any help like that. But back in the present, Takumi realizes the truth. She didn't need those roles for herself. She needed them to protect him. We see Knight Captain Rick standing next to Sasha the healer, proving she went out of her way to recruit the kingdom's absolute best just for Takumi. Nuruhachi calls out the specific people she wants, starting with Priestess Sasha, and she also demands the great thief Batsu join the lineup. So she turns to the queen and double-checks their stats. She needs to know if they specialize in defense, recovery, and danger detection, asking if a test run is needed. The queen confirms they're good to go, so Nuruhachi decides right then and there that she's taking these three with her. Back in the present, Sasha smiles and says it brings back memories. Apparently, she got sent to a monastery after all the chaos back then. Takumi listens to her story, admitting he never had a clue back then that Sasha was actually the queen's daughter. But he suddenly realizes someone is missing from the group and asks where Rick is. He figures the guy should be showing up any second now. Celia's expression drops, and she tells him Rick isn't coming. Actually, he can't come because he's been missing ever since the tournament ended, which makes Takumi freeze in shock. She explains that she had Rick on a special secret mission for a long time. His job was to watch Takumi and Alice to see if anyone shady got close to them. But now the guy who was supposed to be doing the watching has completely vanished into thin air. Takumi gets serious after hearing about Rick's disappearance, so he asks if there's anything he can do to help out. Celia just smiles back and tells him it's fine. All he needs to do is stay right there and flirt with her. And she explains that if rumors spread about her marrying Takumi, the mastermind will definitely show up to see it personally. Takumi notices a massive problem immediately. There's some serious murderous intent coming from his own ally Leia, so he starts sweating, thinking that even as an adventurer, he's never had to deal with a quest this difficult before. Later on, a huge roast chicken shows up on the table, and it's completely stuffed with steaming rice. Leia stares at the dish in total shock and asks what it is, pointing out that the bird is packed with rice, so Celia laughs that it brings back memories of her adventure days. Takumi always made this for her after big quests. Leia's mood instantly turns dark, and she mutters that he definitely didn't make anything special when she arrived. Takumi panics and tries to explain that's wrong back then. The rice just wasn't ready for harvest yet. Leia refuses to be outdone by the nostalgia talk, so she loudly insists that Takumi was super popular back during her time with him too. Later that night in the bedroom, Leia looks at the sleeping arrangement and complains that her spot feels noticeably further away from Takumi than yesterday. She accuses Celia of staring at Takumi's sleeping face right up close the previous night, declaring that she won't allow that kind of distance again. Celia looks completely unbothered and fires back, asking what she's talking about since Leia was the one watching him from point-blank range, and she smugly points out that regardless of who was watching, Takumi was definitely sleeping facing her direction the whole time. Leia comes up with a desperate excuse on the spot, claiming Takumi has a specific habit of showing the back of his head to the people he really holds affection for. Takumi freaks out internally, thinking there's absolutely no way he has a weird sleeping habit like that. The girls get right in each other's faces to argue boundaries. Celia tells her not to cross the line, but Leia screams that Celia is stealing an extra 2 centimeters. Celia snaps back that Leia needs to stop messing around since she's actually the one who's closer, so she offers to switch places if there's so many complaints. Leia refuses instantly, claiming she has a duty to protect Takumi from intruders right where she is. The girls freak out immediately because the beds are separated even further apart now, and Leia complains he's being mean, but Takumi shuts it down. He says this distance is their punishment for fighting. Later that night, Takumi sits up in bed wide awake. He simply can't fall asleep, so he heads outside, remembering how Leia and the others used to crowd his place before the point system. It wasn't just them. Rick and even the hero End were crashing at his place a month before the tournament. He misses those days, but he has to wonder who was pulling the strings and what they were really planning. He thinks about the Takumi points and the missing Rick. Sasha warned him that someone was using Alice, and that leads to the system itself. He looked into it, but the whole setup is insanely complex and massive. Sasha claimed it was just magic, but he knows better. Hidden behind the spells are actual surveillance devices. No single person built this alone. It looks like entire nations teamed up to make this crazy city happen. He figures this high-tech surveillance must be from South City where science is super advanced, and looking back on the last month, he realizes those Takumi points were actually protecting him. He doesn't sense any malice from whoever made the system. Honestly, it didn't feel evil at all. It actually feels kinda nostalgic to him for some reason, but then he hears a noise nearby. A creepy guy with a bowl cut walks out of the shadows with Machina and casually says good evening. He introduces himself as Dr. Deus and says he hacked a backdoor password just to come test Takumi's power. He complains that Machina didn't bring back enough intel from the tournament, so he had to come himself. Takumi is stunned, asking if he's really here to test him and what that password business is about. Then it hits him that girl Machina wasn't just fighting before, she was spying on him the whole time. Deus doesn't give him time to think. He orders Machina to start the experiment right now. Machina activates her combat system, announcing that slaughter mode is starting and she's ready to engage, so she launches a feint, and Deus is super impressed that Takumi didn't move a muscle. He assumes Takumi realized it was just an intimidation tactic. Takumi turns around shaking, but the reality is way sadder. He's screaming internally that he didn't move because he physically couldn't react in time. Deus keeps analyzing him, saying Takumi could obviously destroy Machina in an instant, but he asks if the reason he's holding back is because he noticed the secret. Takumi sweats bullets with a frozen smile, thinking he definitely can't destroy anything and honestly didn't notice a single thing. That's when Deus drops the bomb, literally revealing that Machina is packed with enough explosives to wipe out the entire mountain, and Takumi just screams. He stands there totally paralyzed with shock while the dust settles around him. But Deus ignores the reaction and tells Machina to actually aim for real this time because he wants to see how the strongest moves. Machina acknowledges the order with a cold "yes, doctor," and immediately starts blasting away with her arm cannon. Takumi runs for his life, but Deus completely misreads it, noting in his files that Takumi's weak aura is just a genius strategy to lower the enemy's guard. Takumi scrambles behind a rock, and even the narrator notes that his dodging skills are pathetic, literally just E-rank level. He screams with tears in his eyes that he isn't showing off or holding back, he's just genuinely weak. But Deus ignores the pleading and tells Machina to blast that rock with a rocket launcher to test his defense. So Machina just says Roger, and activates something called Grand Slaughter mode like it's no big deal. Takumi realizes he's in serious trouble and definitely can't handle these guys on his own anymore. But just then he spots a familiar bell appearing in the air and hopes it means Niruhachi is teleporting in to save him. Deus notices the magic immediately and smiles, wondering if the Great Sage's teleportation can actually break his system. An alert suddenly pops up on the digital display confirming an intruder, which catches Takumi off guard, and the system announces it's starting anti-intruder protocols right in front of his confused face. The computer finishes analyzing the teleport magic and immediately executes a reverse transfer to block it. The system confirms the intruder has been removed and Deus declares victory over Niruhachi. So Takumi screams in panic because Machina immediately readies an anti-tank bazooka and starts counting down from 5 to finish the job, and she yells to fire and launches a rocket that causes a massive explosion right where Takumi is standing. Takumi checks himself and realizes he's somehow not dead. But then he feels a hand on his head and looks up. Karna shows up in her human form with a big smile and tells him she kept him waiting, which makes Dr. Deus completely lose his mind. He yells that it's impossible since his system didn't detect a summoning at all. He starts rambling about action memos, wondering if it was chantless magic or some high-level jamming, and he screams that it must be a lie because not even a creator god should be able to bypass his security system. Takumi just looks at the dragon girl and casually explains that he didn't actually summon her, and he tells Deus the simple truth. She's been right there with him inside the sword from the very beginning. Takumi just calls out Karna's name as she stands there protecting him, and Dr. Deus completely loses it. He screams at Takumi, demanding to know what he is and accusing him of being an entity that overturns all science. Karna grins and whispers for Takumi to just say his usual line, so Takumi puts on his confident face and tells the doctor that he figured it out perfectly, admitting to everything. Deus frantically checks his data and sees that she's a black dragon with zero record of prior contact, which makes him come to a terrifying conclusion. He yells that this wasn't a summoning at all, but that Takumi must have created her from scratch. He screams that Takumi created a dragon instantly and asks if the rumors about his father being the creator god are actually true. Takumi just sighs to himself, thinking about how his dad is literally just a normal guy who runs an inn, but Deus decides he's out of options. He grits his teeth and orders Machina to target the dragon woman first, and Machina confirms the order immediately, preparing to fire every single weapon she has. Machina unleashes a massive barrage of energy blasts right at them, and Karna uses a dark absorption sphere to block the whole thing effortlessly. She grins and asks if that's all she has, declaring it's punishment time. Deus yells that she's cheeky, so Machina rushes in with her beam saber ready. Karna isn't fazed at all and summons her evil dragon dark great sword, but Machina realizes she needs more power, so she decides to open her limiter. Takumi sees the energy spike and yells Karna's name, totally freaking out. She smiles and tells Takumi not to worry, she has to match their effort. Machina goes full power and activates her limit break Ragnarok mode, so Karna responds immediately by bringing out her evil dragon heavy shield. The clash between Karna and Machina causes a massive explosion, and while it looks intense, Takumi is watching his land get destroyed and complains that his property is getting totally wrecked right now. He turns his attention to the scientist, telling Dr. Deus that being left alone with him probably wasn't in the plan, so he better spill everything he knows. Deus starts sweating bullets and asks if the strongest in the universe is really going to use force, begging him to stop because a single hit would be fatal. Takumi stares him down and realizes something huge. This guy is exactly the same breed as him, and seeing an ant on the ground, Takumi confirms that the doctor is actually on the absolute weakest side of humanity too. Now that he knows he can actually win this fight, Takumi gets a burst of confidence and yells that he's coming for him. Deus lets out a pathetic shriek and covers his head in terror, so Takumi rushes in and unleashes a flurry of rapid-fire punches. Or rather, he starts wildly flailing his arms at the guy like a toddler. Deus keeps cringing and saying ow, but then he pauses mid-scream. He asks why it doesn't actually hurt that much. Takumi's weak punches convince Deus of a totally wrong conclusion. He adds a new memo to his file, noting that Takumi must be suppressing his physical abilities to the absolute limit just to avoid killing a weak opponent. Deus sweats nervously inside his barrier, thinking he needs to correct his previous notes about Takumi not being able to hold back, because clearly this level of control is on another level, so he decides to match that energy. Deus shouts that if Takumi is going to be like that, then he's going to give this fight everything he's got too. They start going at it, which basically amounts to them weakly slapping each other's arms. Takumi tells the doctor that he's putting up a decent fight, but he's not planning on losing, and Deus flails his arms right back, yelling that he's not going to lose either. But while these two are having their pathetic little slap fight, the real heavy hitters make their move. Karna unleashes her evil dragon dark great flame at the exact same moment Machina fires her omnidirectional massacre cannon. And the power difference is just laughable, because the collision creates a massive explosion that instantly blows both Takumi and Deus away like ragdolls, completely interrupting their sad little duel. After tumbling to the ground, Deus stands up wheezing. He's totally gassed out. He tells Takumi he can't physically do this anymore and suggests they just settle the score with rock paper scissors instead. Takumi is hunched over gasping for air too, and he immediately agrees that the doctor has a great idea. So they face off one last time, chanting the opener and throwing their hands down to see who finally takes the win. The rock-paper-scissors match finally ends. Deus collapses on the ground admitting defeat, while Takumi throws his fist in the air celebrating the win. With the battle settled peacefully, they switch gears to food, serving up a plate of perfectly grilled rice balls. Deus takes a bite and completely freaks out, He asks what this is, amazed that shaping rice into a triangle and grilling it makes it so crispy and savory. Takumi keeps the hits coming. He holds up a pot and tells the doctor that if he puts the rice in a bowl and pours broth over it, he'll get a totally different flavor. Deus looks like his mind just exploded. He screams that it's a wonderful idea and he's never seen cooking this advanced in his life. While the doctor is distracted by the food, Takumi shakes his hand and tells him to please stop investigating him now that they have a deal, and Deus agrees to walk away. He admits it's regrettable to give up, but realizes he can't measure Takumi's power with his current abilities anyway. As the enemies leave, Karna waves cheerfully at the cyborg, telling Machina she can come back for a revenge match anytime she wants. Machina pauses and looks back. She warns them that next time, she'll be challenging them with her actual true self. So she disappears with the doctor, leaving Karna to poke Takumi on the shoulder to get his attention now that the coast is clear. Karna suddenly looks a bit worried. She tells Takumi that she can actually only stay in this human form for a little while longer. So Takumi looks confused standing by the cave, asking if the seal wasn't already completely broken when she came out earlier. But she admits that's not the case. She's actually pushing herself really hard right now just to manifest in this form. She explains that if she relaxes even a little she'll revert back, which is why she's been sleeping since the tournament to save power, and Takumi realizes that's why she was unresponsive before. Takumi stands there listening while Karna teases him, asking if he was super lonely without her around all this time. He asks if saving up enough power will eventually break the seal for good, but Karna admits she used to think that was the answer, but it turns out she was wrong. She gets serious, explaining that her desire to help him just opened a small hole in the seal, but fully breaking it requires something specific. And she suddenly grabs Takumi by the shirt and screams in his face that she thinks it has to be the power of love. She closes her eyes and puckers up, claiming that if she falls in mutual love with a wonderful prince and they share a kiss, the seal will definitely break. So Takumi just laughs cheerfully and tells her he really hopes she finds a partner like that someday, completely friend-zoning her right to her face. Karna starts fading away, admitting that a full recovery is going to take a long time, so she asks Takumi to say hi to Chloe for her. Takumi watches her disappear and gives her a genuine smile, thanking her for saving his life back there, and he decides to be honest for once, admitting he was actually a little lonely when they couldn't talk to each other. Karna's voice comes from the sword now, telling him it can't be helped and she'll just have to be patient with him, and then the scene shifts. Meanwhile, Dr. Deus is sitting at his computer, muttering that he doesn't care who wins the tournament. His only mission was getting combat data. Machina thinks about her situation, explaining that maintaining a mechanical body costs a fortune, so she decided to take high-paying jobs whenever she could. She clutches a data chip in her hand, admitting to herself that she'll do the work no matter how dirty the job actually is. But Deus is focused on his screen, revealing that out of everyone at the tournament, there are only 2 data files that are actually important. He pulls up the files on Takumi and Alice. Alice looks like a warrior, while Takumi looks like he's about to wet himself. And Deus notes that compared to all the other fighters, the market price for data on these 2 mysterious weirdos is completely off the charts. Deus mentions he's recording right now because the final battle of this grand tournament is going to be his last chance to gather detailed data. So the scene cuts to the arena where Mayakis yells that she's charging in, adding a loud meow at the end. And Deus pulls up her file, identifying her as the cat-type demon and beast king Mayakis, ready to run the numbers. He reviews the combat power evaluation for Mayaki, basing the data specifically on her recent fights with Zaha and Dagon, and the results are impressive. Her power and speed are rated as top-class S rank right off the bat. Moving down the list, she has stamina at A and magic at B, but her special ability is rated a double S, which leads to a final summary where Deus gives her an overall evaluation of rank S. But then the focus shifts to Alice, who barely puts any effort in as she casually backhands a monster away like it's nothing. The creature goes flying across the arena and smashes directly into the stone wall, crumbling the masonry on impact, and Lyndon watches in total shock, asking if she's really this strong, while the data confirms that Alice's combat power just keeps rising endlessly. Deus is analyzing the battlefield data and sees that Alice's strength is overwhelming, sending the other demons into a panic. But what really shocks him is finding a man standing right there on the stage, keeping completely calm like it's nothing. Takumi reaches out and gently pats Alice on the head, treating the legendary sword saint like a kid, and Deus watches the readings spike. He notes that she took down the 4 heavenly kings instantly, but now her heart rate is racing. Alice turns red and shakes, but Deus misreads the data completely. He thinks she's terrified because she knows she can't beat Takumi. Machina starts freaking out too. She realizes this is impossible and scanning this guy any deeper is going to get her killed, so she looks up at Takumi, but her fear makes him look like some shadowed monster staring right through her. In her head, a scary voice confirms her fears, telling her she understood the situation perfectly and she's exactly right. Her system crashes instantly, the audio logs are corrupted, she thinks she's hallucinating, and the data just flashes unknown. She decides she's not ready to die today, so she turns and runs for her life while her sensors keep failing. As Machina runs away, her internal systems are spiraling. She's obsessing over cutting out the ugly human parts left in her body and erasing all those messy emotions, because her only wish left is to become a totally perfect machine with no humanity holding her back. Takumi watches her go without a clue what she's thinking, just standing there wondering if she's going to be okay running around in a dangerous warzone like this. Suddenly, Chloe gets right in his face with a serious look, asking if it's true that her sister Karna's seal has actually been broken. Takumi explains that she's back inside the sword right now, but yeah, she was briefly revived earlier, and he asks why she's bringing it up. Chloe relaxes a bit and mentions that her grandpa, the ancient dragon, told her the seal was starting to come undone. She says it's a shame she didn't get to see her sister and passes on a greeting from grandpa to Kuchan, which Takumi just politely acknowledges. Then Takumi casually drops a bombshell. He says the grandpa mentioned the only way to break the seal wasn't through power, but through love. Chloe instantly turns bright red and starts stammering about love, completely caught off guard, while Celia watches them from the back. Celia suddenly grabs Takumi with a huge smile, laughing about how nice that sounds and saying she always dreamed of a guy stealing her away after she retired. Celia gets totally carried away with her fantasy, shouting that she wants him to steal her away while mowing down the entire dragon clan, and she starts blushing hard, saying a real gentleman wouldn't even bother going to the royal palace because he would realize true happiness is right there, living forever with his beloved disciple without ever going anywhere else. Chloe isn't having it though. She yells that Celia's idea has zero drama and insists true destiny is about staying together while the world tries to tear you apart. Even Karna pipes up from the sword to agree with Chloe, saying that forbidden love is definitely the classic route to take, so she teases Takumi about how he's just as popular with the ladies as ever. Then she mentions she likes the trope where the girl gets captured by bad guys and falls in love during the rescue, asking Takumi what his type is. Takumi looks completely drained and admits he's really not good with any of this romance stuff, but he eventually says he prefers when two people live their whole lives without ever realizing they liked each other. Karna freaks out, yelling that the love doesn't even start that way. Takumi just walks away while the girls fight in the background, thinking to himself that until recently, he was just trying to stay alive and had no time to think about loving anyone. Karna comments that it sounds just like him, but she asks what he's gonna do if he realizes his feelings right before he dies. Takumi looks a bit awkward and says he wouldn't know until that moment actually comes, but he looks up at the sky with a grin, admitting that he'd probably just pretend he didn't notice it at all. Karna immediately yells at him to cut it out, trying to make it sound like a cool story when it's actually not okay at all. Takumi gets back to business, saying that if they don't find the spy watching them, he won't know when he can stop this fake marriage act. Celia sees her opening and slyly asks if they should just get married for real then, causing Chloe and Leia to absolutely freak out in the background. Celia laughs that she's just kidding, but she reveals she has a plan. She's called a detection specialist who can find anyone no matter how well they hide. As someone approaches, she explains that while this person isn't from the Lucia kingdom, he's someone she trusts completely. They start to wonder if it might be Sasha showing up, but it's Rick who steps forward waving his hand, telling the two of them that it's been a long time. Celia lights up with a huge smile when she sees who it is, and it turns out to be the great thief Batsu, a guy who joined her and Nero Hatch's party 10 years ago instead of taking a pardon. And even though he's got a trash mouth, he never quits when things get tough, making him a super reliable dude. Celia tells him she's really glad he made it here, but Batsu just brushes off the formal stuff, teasing her that she's looking a little more grown-up and sexy now. Then he laughs loud and asks straight up if she and Takumi have already hooked up, so both Celia and Takumi immediately scream their heads off that they definitely haven't done anything like that. Batsu switches gears to business, saying he got the gist of the situation and asking where they want to start, and Celia says they need to find the spy watching them first. But Batsu reveals he already spotted 3 of them on the way, and he's already got one in the bag on his shoulder. Takumi and Karna just stand there with their jaws on the floor, completely shocked. The spy Batsu captured is a girl with short dark hair, and she's kneeling there completely tied up, but she's still defiant, yelling that she won't talk even if they kill her. Batsu just calmly tells her he only wants the employer's name, while Takumi looks at her outfit and realizes she's dressed exactly like Yoru, that ninja guy from the 10 Greats, so Batsu cuts in saying the details don't matter because he already figured out who the real mastermind is. Takumi is shocked and asks who it is, but Batsu ignores the question, simply saying they're about to catch the rest of the squad right now. He points toward the distance and announces that the other two are coming in from that direction. Looks like they finally showed up, and suddenly voices scream out Sister Haru and Sister Yoru as feet come stomping toward them fast. Two figures burst onto the scene with insane speed, and one of them is definitely the high-ranking adventurer Yoru. Batsu doesn't even flinch. He whips out his ropes and snags both attackers out of the air before they can land a hit. He hits them with his instant capture move, leaving them hanging from the trees, shouting that it's impossible. Batsu grins down at the captives, bragging about how quick that was. Told them so. The ninja guy can't believe it, muttering that it's impossible for a mere human to catch their stealth movements so easily. Batsu waves it off, admitting he didn't actually see them or sense them at all. He just uses a different capture method. So he explains it's all about adaptability. If you change your perspective, you can spot things that are usually invisible. The captured ninja realizes something and asks if that's how Batsu figured out that person's true identity. Batsu confirms it, saying he was planning to tell Takumi everything once they were caught. Big reveal incoming, but a voice interrupts saying that's a problem. Batsu just smiles at the threat and says sorry, but that's impossible since he already made a promise to his friends. Suddenly, the captured Yoru slips right out of the ropes by stripping naked and flying off. Her sister Asa screams about how shameless she is, but Yoru just tells her to shut up. Salia instantly panics and covers Takumi's eyes with her hands, telling him he absolutely cannot look at the naked woman. Batsu watches Yoru fly away as she shouts down that since she escaped, the condition of being captured doesn't count anymore. Yoru hovers there completely naked and asks him if he can wait on revealing her secret, and Batsu apologizes for making her show off her sexy figure, but he tells her she's just going to get caught again soon anyway. She ignores the taunt and asks if he can promise not to talk until she's actually captured, so the guy just cracks a grin right there. He seems to think this whole situation is pretty funny. Batsu says that's interesting and agrees to keep his mouth shut until she's caught again. Yoru says she appreciates the deal and blasts off into the sky while still totally naked. Later inside, Leia is freaking out, asking why Asa is even here and why she's eating Takumi's food like it's nothing. Asa just calls her a traitor and asks if she shouldn't be out there trying to beat up her sister right now. She explains she was untied on the condition that she doesn't run away or cause a scene, and Karna sits right next to her and tells Asa to just shut up and eat her food already. Asa stuffs her face with the food and tells him she'll let him off the hook for today since it's so good, and Takumi turns to the guy with the headband and asks what the deal is with Batsu. So Salia stands up and explains that Rick went chasing after the spy. She notes that Batsu hasn't changed at all. She warns them that they're being too careless. Yoru is guild rank 7, so she won't be caught that easily. Takumi cuts in to say that while Batsu is a criminal and can't join the guild, he'd be top rank if he did, and he thinks to himself that he knows exactly how capable Batsu is. The guy drifts through any difficulty like it's nothing. Batsu just scratches his head with a grin and apologizes, admitting that he actually let her get away. Takumi gets serious and asks Batsu who the mastermind behind all this is, so Batsu laughs loud and says that guy will definitely come to help her, so they'll just catch the boss then. Suddenly, a voice calls out from the road. Someone says it's been a long time since they had takumeshi. Takumi yells out in sudden realization. He asks himself if he really just picked up yet another freeloader, and Batsu introduces himself to the new girl. He explains he's Takumi's old buddy and confirms she's Leia, the disciple of both Alice and Takumi. Leia smiles politely and introduces herself. She confirms she has left Master Alice's side and is now studying under Takumi, so Batsu tells her that becoming Takumi's student was the right call. He notes that she's a bit like Alice, so she'll definitely learn a lot from him. Leia looks genuinely happy to hear that and thanks Master Batsu for the kind words with a big smile, and Takumi watches them from the side, noticing that while Leia struggled to fit in with Chloe and Sasha at first, she's clicking with Batsu instantly. He smiles to himself, thinking that this ability to just get along with people is probably another one of Batsu's talents. Batsu finishes his meal and stands up. He decides that now that he's full, it's about time he actually finds the target. But back with the prisoners, the little girl Asa asks her sister Haru if they aren't being totally underestimated right now. Haru tells Asa not to worry because their big sister Yoru won't lose to guys like this. High up in the mountains, Rick stands alone and admits that the enemy is actually pretty impressive. Just like they warned him, he has completely lost track of her position. Rick is scanning the mountains and wondering if the target went back home, but then he realizes she wouldn't leave because she needs those points, so she must be hiding close by. He looks around confused though. No matter how hard he focuses, he only senses wild animals in the area. Back at the base, Haru explains what's happening. It's a special technique called the Beast Transformation Rite, and she reveals that she and Yoru were actually thrown into a wolf pack as kids to learn how to live exactly like beasts. She adds that because of that training, if you just search for a human presence, You'll never be able to tell Yoru apart from a regular animal. Takumi starts tearing up hearing about their traumatic childhood, so he swears he's going to cook them a massive feast tonight to make up for it. Leia steps up and volunteers to go search. She knows the beast technique too, so she tells Batsu and Sasha to handle the guard duty while she heads out. Batsu watches her go and notes that she's a pretty honest and straightforward girl, but he immediately turns to Takumi with a smirk and asks if he's already made a move on her. Leia totally loses it and screams that she didn't do anything, obviously getting defensive about the joke. But Batsu just ignores her and says he'll set some traps at the entrance. He tells Sasha to keep an eye on the prisoners, so Takumi and Sasha turn to look, and they completely freak out because the two girls are already gone. Someone shouts out asking if Yoru came back to save them, but Rick looks at the empty room and says no way, even with stealth. Nobody can hide their presence this well. He realizes this operation wasn't just the three sisters working alone, and Rick explains that there must have been 4 people from the start, even though he only knew about 1. He looks serious and says the real mastermind is the one who showed up to handle this. Rick adds that this isn't just hiding presence. The guy is basically erasing his entire existence, and the group stands outside confused, wondering how someone could pull that off while carrying a Sa and Huru. Rick drops the name of the item. It's the legendary Hades helm, and it can erase the existence of the wearer and anyone they touch. Leia repeats the name in shock, clearly recognizing how bad that sounds, and Rick explains that while it's magic gear like Takumi's sword, this helmet is on a mythic level of rarity that shouldn't even exist. Takumi starts sweating, asking if the mastermind seriously has equipment that's supposed to be impossible to find. Leia turns to their tracker and asks Batsu how they're supposed to find someone who's completely invisible, so Batsu admits that for them, it's impossible, but he mentions they still have 1 card left to play. Takumi immediately points at himself and panics, asking if he has some hidden power he doesn't know about, but Batsu points at the bell on Takumi's collar and says no, they have to use that to call him, even though he hates the guy. But before they can try, a voice cuts in saying it's too bad, Dr. Deus has already set up a barrier to block teleportation, and the voice adds that the barrier will fade in a few days, but right now, that bell is totally useless. Celia explains that she's not worried about leaving her post because she left the safety of the Lucia kingdom entirely in Nuruhachi's hands, and she adds that it was the only choice. If Nuruhachi wasn't there to protect it, the mastermind would have taken over the country by now. But suddenly, someone walks up and interrupts them, saying it looks like they didn't need to use that summoning bell after all. Nanasin immediately recognizes Nuruhachi standing there and starts screaming, asking what the hell happened to the kingdom she was supposed to be watching. Nuruhachi casually replies that she dumped all the responsibility on Nanasin, even though he was crying about it, which makes no sense since he's standing right there. She immediately starts yelling at them, asking what else she was supposed to do when the mastermind hasn't been caught and the kingdom is at risk. So she tries to explain that she tried to teleport to Takumi, but her magic got completely blocked by something, and she screams that any enemy strong enough to block her must be a huge threat, so obviously she had to rush over to help. Takumi laughs awkwardly and says that's great. Now they just need Rick and Alice to show up and the whole gang will be together, but Rick is standing literally right next to him, sweating bullets and wondering if Takumi is blind, or if he's just pretending not to notice for some deeper reason. Batsu points toward a dark cave entrance in the cliffside, but Takumi just looks confused and asks what exactly he's talking about. The thief notes that Takumi and Sasha must have completely erased this place from their minds. It's actually a pretty good spot, and he decides it doesn't matter anyway since he'll fix everything once they capture the targets, so he casually checks in with Nuruhachi. Nuruhachi stares at him and sighs. It really is Batsu, still wearing that same villain face, and she tells him to learn from Takumi's cuteness. Batsu ignores the insult and grins, asking if she confessed at the tournament, and more importantly, if she actually did the deed with Takumi. Nuruhachi and Celia both lose their minds instantly, screaming at the top of their lungs that they absolutely did not do anything. But Batsu keeps talking, muttering that Takumi is a wimp for not making a move on all the girls gathered here, adding that if it were him, he'd take them all. Suddenly, a terrifying voice drops beside his ear, telling Batsu that it's been a long time, but it looks like his final farewell is coming right now. He instantly drops to his knees and bows his head, desperately apologizing for getting carried away and begging her to forgive him, so he quickly stands back up and changes the subject, asking what the actual situation is since it doesn't look like they're being attacked. Batsu corrects the record immediately. It's actually the opposite. The enemy they caught escaped because they're using the Hades helmet. Nuruhachi freezes up, asking what he just said. She thought that guy was the only one who had the Hades helmet. She turns away and raises a hand, realizing aloud that if the helmet is here, then it basically means exactly what she thinks it means. So Takumi watches her reaction from the back, wondering to himself if Nuruhachi actually knows the owner of this mysterious helmet too. Nuruhachi wastes no time and jumps into action, yelling that she's firing off an omnidirectional detection spell, but the effect only lasts 5 minutes. Batsu stands back and tells her that's plenty of time, she just needs to do it, and a massive spell called Wave Sphere Search blasts out, sending magic ripples across the entire landscape to find their target. Batsu grins instantly he got a hit. He looks toward a pair of armored legs standing in the shadows, saying he sees now they were hiding right there the whole time. Takumi and Salia squint into the distance trying to see what he found, and they both completely lose it. No way is all they can think. Salia stares at the armored figure in front of them and finally realizes who it is. She calls out Rick's name in shock. Her mind starts racing, thinking about how Rick must have been plotting something huge involving Takumi and Alice way before the grand tournament, exactly like Sasha warned her. Takumi starts connecting the dots too, remembering that back when they first met as adventurers, the usually calm Rick acted totally weird and shaken just seeing him. He stares at his friend's armored back and asks if this has been going on from the very beginning, so he completely loses it, screaming at Rick and demanding to know if he's been deceiving the whole party since day one. Rick doesn't even try to hide it. He just tells Takumi he figured it out and confirms that he's absolutely right. Suddenly, everything gets weird. Takumi realizes he's literally being sucked into a flashback sequence, and he falls screaming through a dark void of memories, dropping right into the past. He lands in a memory where a woman tells Rick to introduce himself to the group, so Rick sits at the table and introduces himself, stating clearly that he's the knight captain of the Lucia Kingdom. In the memory, young Takumi introduces himself as a rookie who wants to be big someday, while Sasha smiles and offers to handle all the healing support. Batsu jumps in next, saying he's only here for the cash, but he'll save them if he has to. Back in reality, Chloe is amazed by the visuals, calling out to Takumi and asking if this is really a flashback because the picture quality is incredibly clear, and she tells him she feels way more connected to him than before. Takumi looks a bit lost and just asks if that's actually the case, so he starts complaining about the setup. He knows they're investigating Rick's betrayal, but watching his embarrassing past in high def is totally shameful. He realizes this is one of those classic tropes where a long flashback takes zero time in reality, and he agrees that's definitely what's happening. Chloe looks up at the screen and asks if she can throw in some commentary while they watch. Rick gives the okay from below, telling her to go ahead, and the flashback officially restarts, now featuring an unprecedented live commentary track from the audience. Back in the memory, the mage leader decides that since the party is full, they should immediately go challenge an S-rank quest. But young Takumi immediately panics. He nervously asks if starting with an S-rank might be just a little bit too reckless for them. Back in the memory, Takumi is still panicking. He points out that their last AA A-rank run was a total disaster, so he seriously doubts they can survive a legendary S-class quest. Nuruhachi stays totally calm though, telling him not to worry. She insists the three of them are actually quite talented, so there's no reason to be scared of an S-rank, but the quest paper flutters down onto the table, revealing their target is the subjugation of Emperor Behemoth, which is a massive deal, so Batsu takes one look at the request and immediately shuts it down, saying it's straight up impossible. Sasha agrees that it's completely reckless, while Takumi just screams about how worried he is. But that's not the whole story, because back in reality, Chloe turns to Takumi and asks why Nuruhachi kept taking these insane, unreasonable quests all the time. Takumi admits he didn't get it back then, but now he knows she was farming magic power to open the door to the Demon King's Great Labyrinth. The flashback cuts to the actual quest location. It's a harsh, rocky wasteland with steam venting out of the ground everywhere, and things go south instantly. Batsu screams that Takumi is literally catching fire, ordering Sasha to hit him with water and healing magic right now. Nuruhachi takes charge of the chaos, yelling at Rick to forget about protecting her and focus all his defense on guarding Takumi. Nuruhachi yells that the level gap is insane. She says Takumi is gonna turn to ash just by standing near the thing, and Takumi replies that he knows all too well, admitting he was so traumatized he couldn't even cook with fire for a while after this. The Emperor Behemoth suddenly moves, causing massive tremors as Nuruhachi tries to get some distance from the monster. She gets ready to unleash her ultimate killer move to turn the fight around, but the dragon fires a gigantic breath attack first, completely overwhelming the area with raw power. Nuruhachi instantly realizes it's hopeless, screaming that it's impossible and telling Takumi to run for his life right now. She frantically calls out to Rick, trusting him to handle the defense and keep Takumi safe, so Rick steps in and activates his heavy defensive technique, the Shield of 1,000 Layers, to block the blast. The attack smashes through the shields anyway, and Nuruhachi screams that it's all over and Takumi is definitely dead this time. Back in the present, Takumi tells Chloe he doesn't actually remember what happened next, but he figures he survived since he's standing there. Rick decides he has absolutely no choice left in this situation, so he stands his ground and blocks the massive dragon breath attack head-on with his shield. Nuruhachi stutters in shock, realizing that Rick is actually wearing the legendary invincible armor Aegis, and Chloe starts listing off his other gear like Thor's gauntlet, asking if his entire loadout is made of magic artifacts. She explains that equipping even one is usually impossible, so she can't believe Rick is using three at once. Norihachi notices he also has the helmet of Hades that erases presence. She thought it was just a myth until now, but she decides it doesn't matter how he got them as the armor fades away from his body. She tells him he's right and sincerely thanks him for protecting Takumi from that attack. And just then Rick completely gives out and collapses onto the ground looking like a piece of burnt toast. Sasha wakes up rubbing her sore head, looking around confused and asking what happened to Rick. Norihachi tells herself that saving a friend is the only thing that really matters, and Rick just grunts in agreement from the corner. The smoke clears and everyone starts freaking out, asking where that massive fireball went and if Rick actually managed to block it. But when the dust settles, there's just a round white blob sitting on the ground making squeaky noises. It stares up at them blankly and tilts its head, sounding totally confused by the situation, so Takumi and Sasha immediately rush in to hug it, screaming about how insanely cute and fluffy the thing is. Rick watches them from the ground, noting that for some reason the creature seems super attached to Takumi but ignores everyone else. Norihachi explains that the beast is actually the reincarnation of the Kaiser Behemoth, so it obviously hates her and the others who tried to kill it. Mashina adds that since Takumi was the only one who didn't show any hostility during the fight, he's the only one it trusts. Takumi looks at the little guy and decides that since they're buddies now, he's going to give it a proper name. He suggests calling it Bihibu because it sounds cute, but someone suggests treating it as emergency food instead, and the poor thing completely panics. Rick suggests naming the thing cotton meat since it looks fluffy, and someone else agrees that everyone is basically just thinking about eating it. Takumi ignores the food comments and decides that since it's just a baby, he's going to name it Makion instead. Norihachi watches them with a smirk, noting that the creature really does seem to be attached only to Takumi, but Takumi immediately snaps back at her, telling her she's wrong and to stop trying to use names like emergency food or cotton meat. Then Chloe taps his shoulder and points out the baby is missing, casually asking if he actually went ahead and ate it after all. Takumi completely freaks out and screams that he didn't eat it. The little guy is still very much alive and kicking. Norihachi mentions that once this whole mess is sorted out, she might go visit someone she hasn't seen in a while, and she keeps dragging the group on S-rank quests. Takumi narrates that while she's having fun, he basically nearly dies every single time. When the quests are finally done, Takumi ends up as the camp cook for the team, but Sasha offers to help him out. He smiles and tells her it's fine. She needs to rest since she's completely worn out from constantly healing his injuries. Takumi starts prepping food at the camp, telling everyone that since he was useless during the fight, he should at least handle the cooking duties. Chloe watches him work and points out that he actually looks like he's having a good time, then asks why he quit being an adventurer if he enjoys the lifestyle. So this triggers a memory from the past, back at the massive Demon King's Great Labyrinth, where his old party was on an investigation quest in the ruined castle, the exact spot where Alice was originally abandoned. They reached the door to the Demon King's room, which had a nasty magic seal that measured the opener's power and reflected it back to block them. But Takumi just walked up and threw the massive doors open like they were made of cardboard, completely shocking everyone. He explains that the trap didn't work on him for a simple reason. Since his power level is literally 0, there was nothing for the door to reflect. With the doors open, a single beam of light cut through the darkness of the massive room, and right in the center of it, a tiny young Alice was just sitting there all alone on the cold floor. Looking back on it now, it makes him wonder why a strange kid was just sitting in a dangerous place like that to begin with. Takumi continues the story, narrating that he went over to save the girl and calls it a totally moving scene. He explains that back then Alice couldn't really speak words yet, just making weird groaning sounds, but Chloe cuts in immediately to correct him. She tells him that wasn't gibberish, it was the demon language. Takumi is totally thrown off by that info and asks her what Alice was actually saying back then, so she reveals the truth. Alice was actually looking at him and asking if it was okay to break and destroy him. Present-day Takumi completely loses it. He starts screaming at his past self to run for his life, but Chloe tells him to calm down since he didn't die. In the memory, he reaches the girl and she immediately takes a swing at him. He yelps in pain as she hits him, but that doesn't stop him. He just laughs, saying kids should be a little wild, and picks her up right there like it's nothing. Then he puts on his best hero face, telling her she must have been lonely and that he'll protect her from now on. Rick watches them leave from the shadows, admitting he doesn't fully get what happened but is just glad they're safe. He mutters that strange things really do happen in this world, and he just stands there silently, giving a little smile from behind his helmet. Takumi notices him standing there all alone in the hall and asks Karna what exactly Rick is staring at, But Rick is focused on something else entirely. He identifies Takumi as having an astral spirit body demon king aura. Suddenly it clicks for him, he freaks out, realizing this is the same demon king that possessed Linden during the big tournament before. He starts overthinking it, wondering if the possession is currently happening or if it's just a leftover remnant, but he decides to drop it for now, quietly saying he'll see them another time. Back in the story, Takumi explains that after picking up Alice, his adventure turned into him walking through the Demon King's castle with the blob strapped to his chest and Alice on his back. In town, Chloe bursts out laughing and tells him he looks exactly like a stressed-out mom raising kids. Takumi ignores her and asks the butcher for pork scraps, so Chloe keeps the roast coming, snarking that this domestic lifestyle suits him way better than fighting with a sword ever did. Takumi thinks back to the old days, admitting that living with Alice meant putting his life on the line every single day. And he explains that her power was just too much to handle. It would destroy everything around her, including anyone standing too close. Like this one time, a giant boar monster attacked their camp while they were trying to relax. So Alice rushed in to handle it and absolutely pulverized the massive beast into dust with a single punch. But the problem was the debris went flying everywhere, and Takumi almost got killed just from getting hit by the scattered pieces. Later that night while they're cooking at the campfire, Takumi calls out to Alice and she turns to ask him what he wants. He points to the pot full of meat and asks her if she thinks she can eat the entire monster she just took down. But Alice immediately says no way, telling him she would get totally full if she tried to eat all that. Takumi tells her that if she can't eat it, she shouldn't have killed it like that, just scaring it away would have been enough. He gets serious and teaches her the most important rule: taking a life means she has to take responsibility for it too. Alice stares at him for a moment before nodding, telling him she understands what he means about responsibility. Right after that, Takumi puts his hands together and prays loudly to the gods and spirits to thank them for the day, and Alice asks him what he's doing. Takumi explains that he's putting his gratitude for the food into words, so he tells her she doesn't actually have to say it out loud, just thinking the words inside her heart is enough. Alice gives it a try, but Takumi admits he never realized this advice would cause a massive misunderstanding later. Sometime later, Alice is amazed he caught a small rabbit without crushing it, telling him he's awesome for being so gentle. Takumi is gasping for air, knowing the truth is he's just too weak to kill it in one hit even if he tried. But Alice totally misreads it, saying he's amazing for hiding his power and holding back so perfectly when he's stronger than her. She actually learns restraint from this, and Takumi starts hoping she can control her power to live normally, and he watches her walk ahead, admitting that back then, he really thought it would be that simple. Takumi walks home with the rabbit, totally misunderstanding the situation and thinking he fooled her. After that, with Alice on the squad, they start clearing S-Class quests one after another, and 6 months go by just like that. Takumi looks like a walking corpse from all the stress. Meanwhile, someone pops the cork on a test tube to collect a sample from the field. Norohachi asks Takumi if he noticed she preserved a piece of the monster Rick defeated in the tube. Moving on, the group heads over to the guild headquarters to check for work. Linden tells them there are no S-Class quests, but offers a AA one in the Chaos Valley. Norohachi figures they have no choice and accepts it, asking who the target is, so Linden tells them to wait a second while she checks the file. But then she smiles and warns Takumi that Bihibu is literally eating his shirt right now. Takumi freaks out because Bihibu is literally eating the shirt off his back, and he realizes the receptionist is actually Linden. She explains she got assigned here, so she pulls out a needle and tells him to strip. Takumi asks if they really have to do this here, but Norohachi jumps in and yells that a receptionist shouldn't be doing personal favors like that. Linden sews it anyway while Takumi blushes, so Norohachi demands she stop because she wants to do it. Linden finishes up and hands the shirt back, so Takumi thanks her for the quick fix. She switches back to business mode instantly and brings up the target in the Chaos Valley, but Norohachi asks if she has a thing for Takumi. Linden just smiles and tells Takumi to call her if he loses another button. The group heads out, and Karna mentions that Takumi seemed pretty popular with the ladies in the past too. Takumi denies it and says he's just unreliable, so everyone ends up acting like his guardian. Takumi watches the vision and spots Rick right there. He's handing something over to Linden, which makes Takumi realize that Rick and Linden have actually been working together as partners for over 10 years, hiding it from everyone, so he puts the pieces together. If Linden was already the Demon King back then, he has no idea who Rick really is. Karna looks at him with super worried eyes and asks Takukun if he wants to stop watching these flashbacks now. And she tells him straight up that there are some things in this world he's probably better off not knowing about. She suggests that whatever shady stuff Rick is plotting, they should just pretend they didn't see anything. and then she smiles and asks if he wants to just ditch everyone and go somewhere with her instead, just the two of them. She wants to leave all this drama behind and go live a quiet life in some place where nobody can bother them. Takumi looks down and says that's impossible. He tells her he already did exactly that 10 years ago, but he knows he can't change the past where he ran away, and now it's finally time to pay the price for it. The memory shifts to a place called Chaos Valley with these huge rocky cliffs, where Linden steps up and makes a big announcement. She's appointing Rick as the official leader of their party. Takumi smiles and tells Rick he's counting on him, having absolutely no clue he's talking to a traitor. And the armored guy in their group starts walking ahead into the narrow path while the others hang back. He suddenly activates a skill called Shell Release, and his armor starts cracking with energy. Then a massive chimera with a lion head and snake tail shows up out of nowhere right in front of him. Back in the present, Karna watches the vision and says that's definitely ancient magic used to create a chimera. Takumi starts freaking out and says he remembers this moment perfectly. That's the thing that attacked him. In the flashback, the beast roars and lunges straight at him with its claws out, and Rick yells out asking what the hell that thing is, acting completely shocked like he didn't plan this. In the flashback, Alice starts panicking. She says the intel was wrong and a monster like this shouldn't be here, so she screams out and desperately rushes forward to stop it. The chimera slams its paws down hard, crushing the ground right in front of them. Someone yells out that the thing is still moving. It actually tanked a direct hit from Alice like it was nothing, and Takumi looks up in terror just as the beast's massive jaws loom right over him. The chimera swipes its claws with massive force and absolutely clobbers him, so he gets ragdolled through the air while Alice screams his name in horror. Back in the present, Takumi tells Karna he's watching the memory, but admits there was always one mystery about this. And he says he never figured out why that single hit from the chimera didn't kill him instantly. Suddenly the memory shows why. A massive pillar of light explodes around Alice as she lets out a wild scream. The narration explains that Alice is completely overwhelmed by this massive power, unable to stop her own destructive impulses. The witch yells at Takumi not to get any closer, claiming that Alice is already a lost cause and too dangerous, but Takumi ignores the warning completely and forces his beat-up body to sprint straight toward the explosion of energy. The witch screams his name in panic while he crouches down, groaning in pain from his previous injuries. Yet he looks up just as Alice lets out a beast-like roar and rushes him with pure killing intent, totally out of control. It's a face-off between the strongest existence and the weakest one, and neither of them backs down, so Takumi realizes right then that maybe the only reason he was born was specifically to stop Alice in this moment. Alice throws a punch, but instead of crushing him, her fist hits his chest with a super soft, harmless thud. She snaps out of her rage instantly, looking totally confused as Takumi gently pats her head, and she immediately starts freaking out, asking why he's bleeding so much and wondering what happened to him. Takumi tells her gently that everything is okay now and she doesn't need to worry anymore. So Alice smiles big, completely back to normal, and admits that Takumi is amazing. Even at full power, she can't beat him. She hugs him tight and happily declares that he really is the strongest guy in the entire universe. Takumi looks pretty beat up, but he just smiles back, telling her she understood well, and she's absolutely right. That exact phrase echoes in the darkness for a second, the same words he just used, and then Rick reveals that was actually his catchphrase from 10 years ago. Takumi is stunned. That's more surprising than Rick being the villain. Karna starts freaking out though, yelling that Takun is literally dying from his injuries and asking if he's okay, but Takumi ignores the pain, realizing he always thought it was weird he survived this long. Normally he would have died. He figures it out. Rick has been using an invisible shield to lower the damage he takes this whole time, and Takumi and Karna both freeze in shock, realizing that this whole setup must have started way back then. Karna is totally confused, but Takumi figures it out. Using Alice's misunderstanding to make him the strongest was the plan all along. Rick stands there amidst the wreckage and calmly confirms that Takumi nailed it. He's absolutely right about the script. Takumi just stares at him, completely shaken and lost for words, stammering as he tries to process what his enemy is saying. Rick declares that his ultimate goal was to turn Takumi into the king of the world and then bring everything to an end. Takumi realizes something else. That vision he just saw wasn't random. Rick was intentionally showing him that flashback. And Rick admits he didn't plan on the demon sword tagging along, but Karna snaps back that she sticks with Takun no matter what. Takumi steps forward and asks the big question, why go through all this trouble to make a weak guy like him look strong? Rick answers that their king has to be someone who understands true pain. It basically has to be the weakest human alive. He continues his speech, declaring that this specific weak human somehow needs to be stronger than all of them, and Rick grabs his face and reveals his physical body rotted away a long time ago, implying Takumi is the one who has to take over. Takumi completely loses it when he sees the rot, screaming his head off about how scary it is. He keeps yelling that Rick is totally headless with nothing inside, absolutely terrified by the empty armor. Rick tries to get a word in to explain himself, stammering a bit, but Takumi cuts him off and walks away, shouting at him to just put a helmet on already because a talking neck stump is too creepy. Rick gets flustered by the outburst and quickly agrees, scrambling to get his helmet back on. Once he calms down, Takumi tells Rick that making him king won't change a thing. He literally can't do anything and refuses to do anything. Rick just agrees with him, admitting that Takumi really does spend all his time just lazing around. So he explains that being a king of misunderstandings is fine. Alice will be the one taking on the title of strongest. Rick spreads his arms wide and declares that this specific outcome is the one thing he couldn't achieve in thousands of years. And he stands there in his full armor, weirdly sporting pigtails now, and calls it a perfect world. Takumi just stands there sweating, totally confused, and asks what the heck Rick means by a perfect world. He realizes Rick is serious and calls him gross. Thinking about this for thousands of years is actually scary. Takumi tells him there's no way he's becoming king of something that embarrassing, but Rick tells him it doesn't matter what he wants. The misunderstandings are already self-sustaining and won't stop. He doubles down on the drama, declaring that Takumi is going to rule over this world forever. Takumi cuts him off though, pointing his finger and looking pretty panicked about something, so he tells Rick to shut up and look behind him. Rick pauses and lets out a confused sound. Takumi's face lights up and he yells out for Bihibu, realizing the little blob is right there. The creature lets out a cute noise to answer him, acknowledging Takumi, and just then Alice slides into the scene, and Takumi immediately tries to snitch on Rick to her.